Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about What If Naruto Father of Dragons Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. It was a cool spring night in a remote forest. The sky was enwrapped in a dark blue color with beautiful stars spread across the darkened night sky. The wind was flowing calmly and the leaves on the trees were swaying back and forth in all their beautiful color, especially the beautiful attention-stealing pink of a sakura tree that provided a beautiful contrast with the dark sky. The moonlight was illuminating the world elegantly, touching all that was within her grasp with a gentle shine and an elegant touch. The moon is beautiful, shining upon the world as if it were the sun, but much more peaceful than the sun itself, said a smooth voice belonging to a man staring up at the moon. Standing at a height of 6 feet 4 inches was a man that looked to be 18 years of age, lightly tanned complexion, as if he were made from fire itself, with tamed spiky goldish white hair reaching down to the middle of his back, with streaks of scarlet shot throughout his hair. The beautiful silky hair was slightly parted with 2 chest-length bangs that fell all over his marble-sculpted face, covering parts of his sharp eyes, but through the thin strands of golden thread-like hair his magnificent eyes could be seen. His eyes were sharp and beautiful, but they were also wild. The most prominent color within his eyes was azure blue, much like the sky on a clear day, with bits of golden amber and vermilion red seen throughout the eyes. Such eyes seemed otherworldly, truly beautiful gems. Draped over the man's broad shoulders was a tattered jet-black ankle-length traveler's cloak that fluttered with the slightest movements and was fastened onto his left shoulder by a button. He wore a long flowing black kimono that split apart at the waist and reached down to his knees. A long flowing black sash with red and gold tips was worn around his waist that looked to be from Asian influence, distinctively Chinese. Inside of his sleeves up to the middle of his forearm were a pair of black arm guards protecting the back of his hands. Completing the man's look were a pair of midnight black trousers tucked into black combat boots. Suddenly, the man turned his head to the right, noticing someone coming towards his position. Slowly the man became on guard and spread his senses to gauge whom exactly was encroaching upon him in his time of quiet and lackadaisical pondering of life. He was amazed by the level of power that he felt from the being approaching him. It was honestly astonishing to feel such power, but the being approaching felt weakened to the young man's senses. From the dark of the forest a man appeared, but suddenly the man fell into the side of a tree, barely able to keep himself standing. God, the Almighty Father of all angels and demons, the benevolent protector and lover of all humanity, the symbol of wisdom, love, peace, compassion, and the guide to the way for all to live their lives. God was an enigmatic figure in the reality of the world, to be a being that preached for love and peace among all, yet more blood has been spilled in the name of his word. Such things truly stayed in the mind of the Almighty Father, and his speculation on the understanding of humanity, and their devotions to him. The man seemed to be in his early to mid-40s, with long wavy black hair reaching to the middle of his back, with the signs of facial hair appearing upon his gorgeous, chiseled face. His beautiful eyes seemed to constantly change colors according to the spectrum of the infinite color wheel. Truly otherworldly, such eyes were befitting one of divinity. Those beautiful eyes were dulled and slowly losing the normal vibrancy and love they usually held. Wearing white and golden robes that many would see on a priest were slashed up with parts of his body dripping ichor onto the forest floor. God stumbled into an unknown forest and suddenly fell into a tree and decided to rest on the tree, watching the numerous number of flowers being born from his divine blood. Even this close to death, and I still bring life into this world, thought God with a small pain-filled chuckle. You see, God had just previously finished sealing the apocalyptic beast known as Trihexa, using most of his immense power to completely seal the beast. In succession, God went on the battlefield and confronted the 4 Satans in battle and fought tooth and nail to defeat them with the amount of power that he still held. After the long grueling battle, God finally defeated and sadly killed all 4 Satans. When God looked upon the bodies of those that he still saw as his children, it broke the Divine Father's heart, especially when he dealt the final blow on his favorite child Lucifer. It was because of his stubbornness and his sadly admitted pride that the world has come to where it is now, and it broke God's heart to know that he had to kill his own beloved children because he was too prideful to take a step back and look at how his children were acting and their own feelings towards the world. Soon enough he was joined by his right hand and most loyal follower Michael. Looking upon one of his first creations brought tears to the divine's eyes as he looked upon Michael's handsome face, and in his eyes, he could see the pain and anguish in those gorgeous emerald eyes. Such a sight was almost too much for God to bear, especially considering the physical decay along with the mental and emotional fatigue God was feeling from sealing away that monstrous being and from fighting the 4 Satans. Michael offered to heal him, but God shunned that idea as futile. He knew his end was near. He could feel the grips of death on his being. It was humbling. God looked to Michael and beckoned him closer and kissed his beloved son on his forehead, and with a smile God disappeared, leaving a stunned and tearful Michael to explain everything that occurred on this day to the approaching army of angels led by his fellow seraph angels. God flashed away from his angels after the many battles and ceiling. He didn't want his children and soldiers to see him so weak, so defeated. Even thinking about it now almost brought a tear to his eyes. It was disheartening for God. He did not want to leave the world that he loved. This world was his passion. He was connected to everything and everyone in this world. As God was lost in his thoughts, he didn't hear the crunch of grass being walked upon nor the telltale signs of someone walking towards him. "You all right, sir?" Startled by the sudden voice, God looked around, quickly checking to find where that voice came from. Suddenly he came upon a tan, blonde-haired young man with an immense amount of power inside his body. He looked the young man in his eyes and couldn't help but marvel at the boy before him. He was truly something to look at. His silken hair, his posture and body language, and the way the moonlight seemed to be drawn to the boy, as if the boy was calling the moon towards him, giving him a radiant glow. God was reminded a bit of his oldest friend by staring at the young one. Shaking his head slowly, the divine looked to the young man and responded. "I'm sorry, son, did you say something?" questioned the divine creator. "I asked if you were all right, old man," repeated the young man again in a calm tone. Seeing as how the man sitting before him was close to death, he felt it was understandable for the man not to be very focused on his question. God looked at the young man and painfully smiled. "The legacy of both a phoenix and a dragon, I never thought I'd see such a union take form, but to answer your question, no, I am not." An eyebrow rose slowly in what could be considered surprise and interest within the eyes of the newly revealed phoenix dragon. It was surprising for this man to speak of his lineage so easily like that, as if he were speaking of the weather. Usually when someone speaks of dragons and phoenixes, it is either in amazement, wonder, or fear, dependent upon which creature you speak of. The man seated before him spoke of the young man's lineage as if it was no concern to him. "Well, this is quite interesting. I never imagined my first meeting with God would be with you, bleeding and on the verge of meeting death," spoke Naruto in a calm tone, looking at God as if speaking of the deity's current condition was of no concern to him, which, if he was being honest, it really wasn't much of his concern. Keeping his smile in place, God looked at the young man and spoke. "I see you know who it is that I am, but I am unaware of who exactly you are. Might I ask what is your name, young one?" questioned the divine with obvious curiosity racing in his eyes while completely ignoring the obvious parts of the young man's statement. "My name is Naruto," replied the newly named Naruto. "Naruto, it is nice to meet you. It would seem that you are one of the final people that I will have the pleasure of meeting, as you alluded to before. My time is slowly coming to an end. What is it that brings you to this forest so late within the night?" questioned God, looking at Naruto. Naruto looked at him for a moment, and turned back to looking at the moon and spoke. "I was coming out here to enjoy the view of the full moon, and to gain some quiet away from the noise of the world. But that peace has been disturbed. It seems I must find somewhere else to gain some peace." Just as Naruto said that, he prepared to leave from the area. "Wait, don't leave, please, these are my final moments," spoke the divine in a sad tone while looking at the sky. Naruto stopped his sudden departure and turned to God and spoke. "Why?" God stayed silent for a moment, simply staring at the sky, looking at as if it held all that desired. Eventually he averted his gaze from the sky and turned his infinitely colored eyes onto Naruto and spoke. "Let me answer your question with a question. If you were close to death, knowing that all that awaits you is nothing but emptiness, would you want to be alone right now?" God questioned calmly to the young man. Naruto, hearing the question, couldn't help but understand God's point, but his curiosity became intrigued. "What do you mean, emptiness?" Hearing the question, God spoke. "When humans die, the religion that they have chosen to follow and to pattern their life after promises them an afterlife of some sort. Whether it is pleasant or painful is up to the will of the gods of that religion. Even humans who are supernaturally aware go to the specific afterlife designed for them based upon the religion that they follow." Paused God for a moment to collect his thoughts. He spoke once more. "But for supernatural beings such as gods, devils, angels, dragons, and so on, when we die there is no afterlife. There isn't a place for us to look forward to at the end of our days. We live what is known as a finite life. Our lifespan may be vast, it may span centuries, millenniums, and even further beyond, but no matter what, we will always face an end, and when that end comes, we do not receive an afterlife. All we get is eternal silence. That is what I mean by emptiness," finished God while looking at Naruto. Hearing that explanation made Naruto a bit contemplative, as he never truly thought of the outcomes of his death, and what it would mean to him. When his time came, how would he truly feel looking back on his life? Would he be proud of what he accomplished? What was it that he even desired to accomplish in this world? What was his purpose in the world? He was startled from his inner thoughts, as he heard God speak once more. "Do not think too far ahead, young one. In this world, no matter what it is that you are, all of us are the same in many ways. When you think too far ahead into the future, such as in terms of your death, you will have an overwhelming feeling of pressure to accomplish everything you want in life. This overwhelming pressure won't be good for you, as you will struggle to do everything you can to accomplish what you want in a short period of time. and once that happens you will neglect what is the most important to you. It was a mistake that I made, and that foolish mistake was the cause of this war, and the reason for which so many of my children have died, and the reason for my current state. All for my mistakes and in my own lapse of judgment. Guilt and shame were prevalent in the words of the Divine Father. If Odin could see me now, he would mock me," finished God, but he asked a question a moment later. "Are you a warrior, Naruto?" "Yes, I was taught how to use power to protect the people that I care for in this world." Naruto hesitated for a second and spoke once more. "Even though they no longer walk this world with me," finished Naruto in a whisper. God suppressed a cough from escaping his chest as he listened to Naruto's words, but he did catch on to something in his words and in the eyes of the young one. "Who were they that you lost, if you don't mind an old man prying?" spoke God in a calm tone while looking at Naruto. Naruto looked at God and spoke in a somber tone. "That is something I would prefer not to speak of. Old wounds don't need to be reopened." God looked at the young one and responded, "I understand, my boy." Cough, cough. Naruto looked at God and saw him coughing up large amounts of ichor and decided to try to help him straighten up his body. God gave Naruto an appreciative nod and slowly sat up. "It seems my time has come." Just as that thought went through the divine's head, a cool chill swept through the forest, and all the quiet, peaceful sounds of the forest seemed to stop, confusing Naruto, who now was put on high alert with the sudden shift in the atmosphere. Naruto looked around, checking his surroundings, trying to expand his senses to the farthest of their current abilities, looking for a sign as to the sudden shift. He looked to God to ask him, but when he looked at the passing deity, he saw his gaze directed towards something in the forest. The sound of hooves hitting the ground alerted Naruto to the newest presence joining the conversation. Naruto looked over to where the sound of hooves hitting the ground originated, and he came upon the form of a pale white horse with a pair of horns sticking out of its head, with a pair of sinister glowing red eyes staring at Naruto, looking to devour everything in their path. But what truly caught Naruto's eyes was the man riding on top of the horse. The man was tall. Even while sitting on the horse, Naruto could tell the man was tall, with wavy jet black hair that fell to the middle of the mysterious figure's back. He was wearing a black, wide-brimmed traveler's hat on his head. Covering the body of the unknown man was a long black cape, and a blue pendant was worn on the chest of the man. The mysterious figure wore a black skin-tight bodysuit that showed off the lean and muscular figure, built as the perfect balance of speed and power. Around the waist of the figure was a combat belt equipped with many different sections for holding different materials needed in the heat of battle. The man wore high boots with silver riding spurs on the back of his heel. On the back of the man was a long sword sheath that was as tall as the man himself. Naruto was amazed into silence when he felt the aura of this being. It was like staring at an unstoppable force of nature. As Naruto continued to stare, the mysterious figure raised his head, and slowly Naruto could see the face of the man. The man looked to be about the same age as Naruto himself, with a complexion that Naruto familiarized with milk. Upon further inspection, he saw that the newcomer had thick masculine eyebrows, a smooth bridge of a nose, with long, thin, cold, dark eyes that shined with millenniums of experience and knowledge in his eyes. "So, you have finally come for me, old friend." Startling Naruto from his admiration and fear-induced staring, he looked at God in confusion, trying to understand the relationship that these two men shared. The mysterious man spoke in a low, smooth voice. The voice reminded Naruto of the finest silks. "Yes, I have. Are your affairs in order?" God looked at his oldest friend and smiled calmly. "Michael knows my time has drawn near. He will probably keep it hidden from all except for his fellow seraphs. He shall lead heaven in my stead. Might I have a few more minutes to speak with the young one that has kept me company in my final moments?" Hearing the request did not surprise the man in black. He was expecting such a request just from the look he saw in God's eyes, so he allowed the request and waited in silence. With an appreciative nod, God turned his head towards Naruto and spoke. "Naruto." Naruto turned his head toward the dying deity with a measurable amount of difficulty, as being in the presence of the newly arrived man was quite suffocating for the young dragon. It was something Naruto only experienced once in his life when he asked his father to unleash his true power so Naruto can have something to reach to, and the fear that he felt that day was something that would always stay with him. "Have no fear of him, young one. Death is not someone to fear," spoke God in a fatherly tone. Seeing Naruto relax, God spoke once more. "Naruto, I see great things in your future. You will be a force in this world, and when the day comes you will be the one to change our world and all the others. But you must remember something. When one walks the path of power, they become lost in its loving embrace and its silken touch." This was wisdom gifted from ages of existence and pondering of the very core of the metaphysical. You see, power is a gifted curse. It is something that everyone desires because it is needed in life. That is, its gift, All that you could desire shall be in your possession if you have power. Its curse is the struggles that come with the power you achieved. In life, powerful creatures, whether they be human, divine, demonic, or other, they are tempted by the gift of power and believe that gift to be a pass to do as they wish, no matter if it harms others or the world. Always remember, a wielder of true power uses their power to protect what is precious to them. Find what is precious to you and protect it with everything you have, no matter what. Finished God in a serious tone while looking at Naruto, who could only nod at those words. Those words brought up nostalgic feelings for Naruto as he remembered the words his mother used to tell him during his days of training with his father. Naruto nodded his head in confirmation, understanding the lesson he was gifted. God saw this and turned his gaze towards the now waiting Death. Death slowly walked towards both supernatural beings. After God finished delivering the message that he desired, Death spoke. "It's time, my old friend." Smiling, hearing the words, God nodded, contently accepting his fate. He slowly stood up with the help of Naruto and spoke with a chuckle. "You always did say that you would come for me one day, D," spoke God with a calm smirk on his face as he addressed Death. Hearing the name addressed to him, D looked at God and did something that only God ever had the privilege to witness on more than one occasion, a ghost of a smile. Death couldn't help but feel a hint of sadness knowing that the one person that has been around since the early days was leaving this world. It reminded him that nothing would last forever, even him. Death's appearance returned to its normal stoic visage as his vision changed and focused on Naruto, who still looked to be afraid in his presence, but he seemed to gain security little by little the longer he stayed around him. Seems the young dragon bears some promise. He will do nicely. Seeing this, the man in black looked the boy in the eyes for a couple of seconds and spoke. "You will come as well." After hearing those words, both God and Naruto had differing reactions. Naruto's reaction was that of confusion and apprehension, hearing from the being recently identified to be Death that you will be coming with him as he is in the middle of reaping someone instinctually brings a level of apprehension in your heart. Slowly Naruto's body tensed after hearing those words. He wasn't ready to die and damn sure wasn't going to make it easy to take him either. As Naruto was tensing and preparing himself for the possibility of fighting Death, God on the other hand had surprise and curiosity written all in his eyes as he looked to his friend. "Why are you bringing him with us?" questioned God in calm curiosity, wondering what his old friend was thinking. He looked back to God and spoke, "This child is someone of worth and interest to me. He possesses a will to stand against all odds that may appear before him, seeing as how he prepared to fight me after I told him of my decision, even if deep in his soul he knows that to battle with Death is as foolish as believing that the sun no longer exists simply because you close your eyes. Besides the offspring of a phoenix and a dragon, that sounds like the perfect pupil," finished Death in a calm tone while looking at God. Naruto couldn't believe his ears. Death, the being that struck fear in all who walked the world, desired him as his pupil. It was honestly something that he never in his wildest of dreams thought would ever happen. God looked at D with realization passing through his eyes and looked at Naruto out of the corner of his eye. God could understand his friend's thought process completely. God himself wouldn't have minded taking Naruto as a student if they met on different circumstances. With his intentions now known, D placed his hand in front of Naruto's face, and soon Naruto saw something that completely confused the shit out of him. From Death's hand was a face that had a sickening smile with eyes pure black that looked to eat anything they desired. Slowly the face opened, his eyes wide, and Naruto couldn't help the sudden feeling of tiredness that washed over him, and he fell off to sleep. "Why do you really desire to bring him with us, D?" questioned God, looking at Naruto, who just ungracefully face planted on the forest floor. Suddenly the face that stared upon Naruto spoke in an aged voice that seemed to speak with millenniums worth of knowledge and whimsy. "OD is bringing the young hatchling along because this boy is the lineage of the dragon that brought the world to heal all those years ago, and the phoenix that saved all you young deities from dying that day. You remember, don't you, D? All the pantheons coming together, and standing against that ancient dragon, fighting in vain. The helplessness that permeated throughout that day was so delicious. What was that dragon's name again? Do you remember it, D? Ah, well, it doesn't matter, that dragon's name seems to be lost to time now." God looked towards the newest participant of this meeting and couldn't help but chuckle, albeit a bit painfully, as he remembered Death's associate. God looked to D with amusement rolling off his person, as he could tell even with Death's stoic demeanor he knew that the parasite always seemed to annoy his friend. Suddenly D grabbed Naruto and threw him onto the back of his pale steed and placed his hand upon God's shoulder. With a resigned look in his eyes, God smiled one final sad smile as the thoughts of all that will be gone reached his mind, and he couldn't help letting some tears flow. His followers, his angels, his family, even the devils that opposed him, he loved them all and didn't want to leave it all behind. But unfortunately, even God was powerless in the grasp of Death. Suddenly the area was enwrapped in a bright light, and for an instant the entire world and all its occupants felt an immense warmth wash over them, a warmth that couldn't be described. But in an instant that warmth vanished, leaving the world to feel a bit hollow. It had been a long time since he slept like that. It was so relaxing. Come to think of it, when was the last time he had slept on something so comfortable? Slowly waking up, Naruto opened his eyes to see the coverings of a bed canopy over top of him. Slowly sitting up in the magnificently comfortable bed, Naruto looked around to get any sign of where he was at, but all he saw was a curtain surrounding the 4 bedposts, providing a feeble attempt to gain privacy. Sliding out of the bed and moving the thin curtain aside, Naruto came to realize that he was in a mansion, and whosever mansion this was, they were very well off. Absent-mindedly, Naruto noted that he was still wearing all his clothes from his unexpected meeting yesterday except for the traveling cloak. He would have to make sure he didn't lose that cloak. It was made from very durable materials, and was a special gift. Suddenly the door opened behind him and Naruto stood up and walked around the bedpost to get a good look at the person who entered. Upon his discovery, Naruto realized that it was in fact Death, wearing that same stoic visage and the cold, apathetic aura that struck fear in many. Naruto looked the man in his cold eyes and adopted a stoic visage as well, trying to match the man before him while also showing no signs of weakness. Soon enough, in calm strides, Death stood before Naruto eye to eye. Naruto acknowledged the fact that the aura around the entity wasn't as suffocating as to when he first met him. Was it because he had become a bit accustomed to standing in the presence of Death? Possibly. Could it be because Death simply didn't feel like letting his aura loose right now? Much more likely. But for the sake of Naruto's pride, he decided to agree that it was the former. Naruto looked Death in the eye and spoke, "May I ask, where is it that we are?" Before D could speak to answer the question, his symbiotic partner spoke up in his place. "Who, this young one has manners, kihihi. Not many children these days have manners when speaking to their elders. I like the hatchling already." Naruto raised one elegant eyebrow and looked towards the left hand of Death in silent question. D chose that moment to respond to the question in that smooth, apathetic tone, the tone that kings used when speaking to his servants. "We are in my home within the lowest realm of the underworld, Cocytus. This will be what you call home for the remainder of your time as my pupil," finished D as he continued to look at Naruto's multicolored eyes. The gaze of Death seemed to peer into Naruto, absent-mindedly looking through his life and seeing who exactly he was. D was searching for something in those eyes. Naruto didn't know what the man searched for in his eyes, but he knew it was something of worth. "Yes, sensei." D rose an eyebrow to the title afforded to him by his first pupil. Shrugging in response, D turned his back and began walking towards the door. "Come." Without needing another word, Naruto followed behind D throughout the mansion hallways, and Naruto saw upon the wall paintings of many different depictions, some of great fierce battles, some of them different historical works one would find in a museum, others were paintings of specific people. Naruto didn't get to look towards the pictures for too long, as the sound of a door opening alerted him to the entering of a large open room as Naruto descended the 4 steps while he kept looking around the giant empty room. Soon enough he saw D turn towards with that ever-stoic expression, with his eyes demanding Naruto's attention. Given what he desired, D spoke and his voice traveled across the room, reverberating off each wall, making it appear that Death was yelling when he spoke in his usual calm voice. "We will come here every day and we will fight. Should your performance be subpar, you will no longer breath," finished Death while staring at his newest pupil. Naruto stared at the primordial being and nodded his head in affirmation to the words being spoken to him. Slowly Naruto widened his stance and dug his feet into the ground to create a solid base and tensed the muscles rippling throughout his body. He was preparing to go against Death, and his instincts screamed to him, confirming the final part of his sensei's words. Soon enough, just as Naruto settled into his stance, an object blasted by his left eye, narrowly missing the eye and cutting some strands of hair. Boom! Slowly Naruto turned towards the sound as looked to the wall behind him and saw a crater, and at the epicenter of the crater was a wooden needle. Did that much damage? Suddenly Naruto sensed lust permeate throughout the room. Not the lust for flesh, no, this was different. This was the desire to take life away from the world, and right now Naruto was the object of this killing lust. Soon enough he heard that strange disembodied voice from before, speaking much closer this time, and he could hear the mirth and enjoyment in the voice as it spoke of his possible bisection. "Oh foolish boy, never turn your back to the enemy, you never know what they might do behind you," finished the voice with a chuckle. Then Naruto heard the song of a blade as it approached him, planning to slice his right shoulder down to his left hip. Sensing the desire coming from the owner of the blade, Naruto flashed away in a high-speed movement, and flashed to the other side of the room and faced his teacher once more. This time his eyes were sharpened and cold. Naruto could taste the refined killing lust that was liberated from the body of Death, the blade of Death. Even the needle stuck in the wall was wafting with such desire as its master did. Naruto saw this and understood the message given to him by his teacher, and allowed his desire to be known to all occupants within the room. Naruto let his power flow within his body. In Naruto's right hand a ball of pale gold flames formed, surrounded by vermilion red flames with bits of azure and black seen shot throughout the ball of fire. With a mere thought, Naruto's desire came to form, and in his hand, was no longer a ball of intense flames but a medieval-style broadsword comparable in size with both Naruto and D with an X-shaped crossguard. Naruto gripped the handle of the blade and his murderous lust was unleashed in the room. With that set, Naruto was truly ready for combat now. Ha ha ha, this boy was a good choice, D. Usually when people feel your aura they became shaken prey waiting for the end, but this boy is responding beautifully. Oh, the lust for murder tastes so good when it's directed at us for once, wouldn't you say, D? Nonetheless, this boy will be quite interesting to watch under your teachings. This aura surrounding him is quite strong for one so young. When the boy matures and hits his prime he might surpass you, Death. D's eyes shifted to his left hand for a moment, and went back to his pupil waiting. He could sense the desires in the boy's aura. He was going to begin the dance this time around. True to D's senses, Naruto took initiative and appeared on Death's right side with his blade traveling in fast speeds aiming to split Death in two at the waist. Hearing the blade swing through the air, Death jumped to his left to avoid the great reach afforded to the blade. Seeing his opponent dodge his attack, Naruto disappeared and appeared behind Death in a show of pure speed and prepared another waistline slash at his opponent. But in a show of unnatural agility and awareness, Death spun in midair and caught the wrist of his pupil, earning the ire of the parasite in his hand, not that he truly cared, and raised his long sword high and intent on delivering a vertical slash down with great speed. Thinking quickly, Naruto raised his left hand horizontally and conjured a similar broadsword to the one in his right hand, effectively blocking D's strike, resulting in a power struggle of metal sparks and tiny embers. D looked in Naruto's cold eyes, and true to his companion's words, the boy was interesting, especially going by the skill and quick thinking that the boy was showing, and the strength and speed he saw was also promising as well. But for him to truly gain an idea of what his student was capable of, he would have to continue at a more ruthless pace, possibly even use his blood to test the boy. While D was in his thoughts, Naruto was tired of the stalemate and aimed to change that right now. Atsugai, pressure damage. D suddenly saw his student blow out a medium-sized wind bullet that struck with enough force to carry him away from the gridlock match. Naruto dispersed the broadsword in his left hand and narrowed his eyes at the ball of wind within his teacher's chest. A silent command passed, and the ball exploded in a show of fierce winds, almost forcing Naruto to close his eyes due to the repercussions of his technique. But he removed that notion from his body, knowing that his sensei wasn't someone you could actually close your eyes around, especially in battle. A second was all it took for Death to be seen from the ensuing winds. Gracefully D landed on the ground as the winds calmed down, slowly giving Death a mystical appearance, as his cape lightly fluttered behind him during his landing. Once again D was standing still, calm and composed, watching his pupil study his person. The boy was good with elements, and D could sense a third element dancing around in the boy's body, waiting to be released on him, hoping to get a chance to sink its claws in Death. D, the boy is showing promise. It seems like you're at a disadvantage, kihihi, you've gotten slow in your old age. D showed no outward indication that he heard the words. He was already in the process of the next phase of the testing. It was time to really test the boy's swordsmanship. Suddenly D propelled himself to speeds far faster than before, after images were left behind D as he propelled himself towards his opponent. Naruto's exceptional eyesight gifted to him by his avian mother allowed him to accurately track the fast movements of his sensei, albeit with some difficulty. Within a second D was upon Naruto, going for a diagonal slash that Naruto saw and raised his blade with two hands on the energy hilt, feeling the strength behind his master's swing. Naruto locked his blade with Death's and entered a quick battle of strength that neither desired to continue, so D relieved the pressure he had on his blade, which caused Naruto to fall forward slightly, losing a bit of position. With that, D spun around Naruto and aimed a slash onto Naruto's ribs. Regaining his balance quickly, Naruto turned and dodged backwards out of the range of the sword. With no reservations, Naruto dug his feet into the ground and shot back at his opponent, aiming to slice into Death once more. Naruto's flaming broadsword intensified with the desires to murder its master's opponent. Seeing the glow, D charged toward Naruto and swung his blade at the same time as Naruto. Both Phoenix Dragon Hybrid and Primordial Entity entered a flurry of bladed clashes and shockwaves sounding all throughout the room. If anyone with untrained eyes was watching the battle, they would only see glimmers of motion indicating that a battle was even going on. Even with experienced eyes, one would say the two swordsmen were even in their battle. But the actuality of the repeated clashes would soon show that there was a great difference between the two swordsmen. After one final clash, both opponents broke away from each other in two very differing states. Naruto looked as if he jumped head first into an oncoming army. With slices and blood dripping all over his person, some gashes deeper than others, but slowly they were healing thanks to the regenerative properties afforded to him thanks to his phoenix that was being severely reduced thanks to the powers of Death's blade. Naruto looked to be panting slightly from the high-speed movement, but his grip on his blade was still strong. Standing across from the bleeding phoenix, D was looking as pristine and calm as he first did when the spar first began, watching his promising pupil. Naruto slowly relaxed his positioning and began to recollect on the battle. Alright, so he's amazingly fast and strong, and I'm pretty sure there is a couple more levels he can reach. His swordsmanship is at a level I could only dream to match at this point. Damn, maybe I should try to turn this and dash. Suddenly, death disappeared from Naruto's sight. Naruto was shocked by this sudden movement, expanding his senses to their greatest capabilities, and Naruto's eyes widened. He looked up to see death dropping on top of him at an immense pace that utterly surpassed all the speed he was displaying before. Naruto quickly jumped backwards. Damn it, I didn't even hear or see him move. Death slammed into the ground, creating a crater with his landing, and shot out of his newly minted crater towards his backpedaling prey. Naruto strained his eyes and other cardinal senses to predict where the primordial would appear. Suddenly Naruto planted his feet and performed a half-spin towards his right, and swung his long sword horizontally with the confidence that he was about to land his first hit in this spar. But time seemed to stop for Naruto, when he looked at his blade and saw two boots standing on his energy blade. The young dragon dreaded the image he saw as he looked up and saw his sensei's eye as cold as the highest mountain peaks. The aura that surrounded D and his blade was tangible, and Naruto knew what he was staring at. This was the wrath of death. Thinking quickly, Naruto dispersed his blade with a quick show of embers and energy, and dodged the blade and went towards D's side and unleashed a side kick on the primordial suspended in air. Naruto jumped back as he saw his sensei return to his standing position once more. "You've performed well," spoke D in a stoic voice that traveled throughout the room. Naruto heard the compliment, and allowed a small smile to grace his face, but in the next moment, that smile left Naruto's face and was replaced by fear. Death looked in Naruto's eyes and spoke in a voice that sent terror throughout Naruto's body. "Now I will test your full power." Suddenly D cut into his own hand and slowly raised his hand into the air while squeezing to devour the blood that fell. The air shifted and nature seemed to scream in protest with the newest rise in power. Naruto was shocked by the recent shift, and a smell permeated through the air that confused him. Why does he smell like a vampire? Just as that thought passed, the power being released from his sensei was weighing down on Naruto, and felt as if his body was screaming for him to lay down and accept the death being assured to him. Naruto willed his eyes to look at his sensei's, and what he saw surprised him, as these usually cool dark eyes were now red with vengeance, and the wrath of nature demanding the blood of who stood before him. D grit his teeth, and Naruto could see enlarged fangs that looked able to rip flesh from bone easily. Before death had a noble aristocratic appearance combined with his vicious skill in the arts of murder, he looked to be the perfect representation of the destruction of life. Now with this side exhibited, death looked to be the perfect representation of the apocalypse brought upon the world. Oddly enough for Naruto, it was beautifully chilling to watch the transformation take form. But Naruto knew what was being asked of him, and so he obliged and followed his master's example. Suddenly the young hybrid's body glowed and all his wounds were healed and sealed along with the rips in his clothing. Naruto's eyes glowed with power, accentuating the different prominent colors displayed throughout his beautiful eyes. His scarab became midnight black in response to the sudden power release, providing a stark contrast to the shining eyes displayed. Naruto's aura looked to be the exact opposite to D's. Where death's aura made the world scream in horror and terror, Naruto's seemed to make the world sing of jubilance and awe-inspiring beauty. Heat radiated from Naruto's body, such heat that looked to burn everything its master desired. The air in the room became chaotic around Naruto, and continued to whip about around the young dragon. Even sparks of lightning were seen briefly around his body. He could smell the scent of phoenix and dragon throughout the air, and the boy was releasing an amazing amount of power. "I chose right with this boy," thought D, with excitement raising throughout his body at the thought of what the boy could become under his care. Usually death wasn't an existence that grew excited with anything, especially when it came to battle. Because many people were too terrified of even the idea of fighting him, or the beings that weren't scared were either too bothersome to find, like Ophis, that annoying dragon. Just the thought of attempting to go after her or him, dependent on how the dragon was feeling, almost gave death a headache. Then there was Great Red. Now that dragon would be a worthy foe and not that difficult to find. But bringing that creature out of the dimensional gap would be too much work, seeing as how the beast loves to just fly around. Now going into the gap wouldn't be very difficult with the abilities D wields, but an ensuing battle with Great Red in the gap could result in disastrous consequences for the surrounding realms, consequences even D's genius intellect couldn't fully calculate with true certainty. Only the two ranked above him could provide such a challenge. Then again, no one had seen death call upon his blood in battle as he did in this spar. Should someone feel the power he was releasing now, many would question who in fact was the strongest being in existence. But aside from that, D could definitely say he was proud of his student for being able to handle the pressure, and for even fighting back against the pressure with his own power. But then again, it wasn't like he was using a significant amount of his power. No need in putting the entire world in terror by feeling bits of his true power. He seems to be in control of his power now. The real fight will begin. Just as that thought went through D's head, Naruto's grip on his broadsword tightened in preparation, Seeing the action, D readied his own blade and both fighters stared at each other waiting. Patience was a virtue in this world, and in this instance that virtue was shining through. As the dust from the power displays settled, Naruto and D shot towards each other, leaving craters where they once stood, with both approaching the middle of the arena in an instant. Blades of righteous fire and vicious steel raised, poised, and swung. A blinding light was seen to overtake the room, leaving everything blinded. The show of light lasted only just a moment. But as any warrior knows, a moment can decide life or death. As the show of power ended, the first thing seen was a steep crater filled with wisps of black translucent energy, and wisps of fire in different areas of the crater. Within the middle of the crater were master and student, each in different positions. The master stood tall and calm, reverting back to his original state of noble apathy. His blood finally quelled from the recent awakening and sated by the taste of the young one laying at his feet. Looking down at his newest student, he felt excitement swell in him as he remembered the power the young hybrid released on him, and to think the young Drake was nowhere in his prime. That boy is something else with the power he released. That boy is definitely in the upper echelons of power at this state. But you didn't really test the boy too much on his elements, why not, D? D waited a moment, and continued to stare at his pupil. The parasite was used to this behavior, being with D for so long, long before the world over called him Death. Patience was something that one must be well versed in while speaking to Death. After a few more moments, Death responded, I already saw his prowess with nature when I looked in his eyes. I wanted to test his will to see if he truly was worthy. You always did value the will of a person over their power, seeing as you are a man of indomitable will, you would respect others with strong will. D remained silent on the comment, neither confirming or denying the claim. It wasn't needed, they both knew that. With nothing more, D crouched down and picked up his unconscious student with little difficulty, and carried him towards his temporary room. He couldn't help but speculate on what exactly the future held for his first and probably last student. Power is something that has been ingrained in him since his very existence on this world. Being born a member of one of an ancient and long-lasting species afforded D the ability to think about the world and the occupants of the world. All species in existence classified themselves on differing traits such as power, blood purity, choice of the people, etc., but in the eyes of D such distinctions were foolish. By having these distinctions, the transient guests of this world ostracize each other and breed such emotions such as hatred, anger, jealousy, and envy. D had seen many things in his life even before his days as a primordial deity, such simpler times where he fought vampires who terrorized humans, looking for the next job and people that needed his services, and all the while merely searching for the him. All existences in this world had a purpose, whether it be as simple as finding food and mating to more complex ideas and beliefs such as creating a better system for the world, discovering academic secrets, or simply being a good ruler, and all that comes with the position of power. Before his ascension to divinity, D's one purpose was to find the one man that could explain his origins and his existence. The one vampires called their god, the sacred ancestor, to understand why he was the success, the one chosen above all others to be the most like him out of all his other experiments and progenies. Even upon ascending to divinity, D still searched for the man that made him who he was. That was the reason to attain such powers, to be able to stand in front of the king and understand it all. Arriving to the door of his pupil, Death knocked on the door, recollecting upon the purpose that he chose to strive for in his life and what it meant to understand purpose and power. Soon enough, Naruto opened the door, only wearing a pair of black pants. The boy was probably sleeping. That's all the boy ever did if he wasn't training. Opening the door, Naruto saw Death standing at his door. He still felt small chills when he acknowledged that. With curiosity evident within his eyes, he spoke, Yes, sensei? Get dressed and meet me in front of the mansion. With his wishes spoken, Death turned and continued down the hall towards his pale steed. That horse was starting to get restless, being cooped up in his stable. It was good to allow that temperamental horse to stretch its legs and taste the different air of the underworld, maybe even the human. Slight closing of the door and calm shuffling of movement behind the recently visited door alerted him to his pupil's incentive to follow his orders. The boy knew better than to question his orders, lest he desire to incur some of Death's more brutal training methods. Within 5 minutes, Naruto was standing beside his teacher, who was sitting upon his pale horse. Looking at Death, Naruto couldn't help but marvel at the figure of the man sitting upon the pale steed with his all-black ensemble, longsword that was the same size as Naruto, and his chilling beauty showed Naruto that this man truly was otherworldly. From the corner of D's sharp eye, he could see his pupil staring at his form in reverence and admiration instead of fear. When did that switch happen? When did you start to look at me with reverence instead of fear? Hearing the question and accurate description of his current mindset, Naruto shook his head, sending his silken hair back and forth, and dropping it all over his beautiful face, he responded, I have always looked at you with reverence ever since I first saw you. The power you have is something many beings couldn't even dream of. I could classify it as a force of nature. You are the closest thing I can call an idol. Finished Naruto in a calm tone while running his clawed slender fingers through his hair to return it to its original position. Death is your idol? spoke D with curiosity in his tone. Naruto nodded his head a couple times. Yes, you are someone with a level power that is incomprehensible for someone like me at my current level of power. The only person I knew that stood on that field of power was my father, and I only knew him for a short period of time. Finished Naruto while looking ahead at the fog-filled area that they inhabited at the moment. Hearing the answer made D curious about something. Power. That is something you seem to hold within high regard. Let me ask you, what do you strive to gain being my pupil? I desire power to protect what is dear to my heart, while also being at the top of the world. That is where the perfect union should be, above and revered by all. Spoke Naruto with determination in his face as his eyes hardened. D turned his head slightly to Naruto and asked the question that the boy needed to answer for himself. And what is it that you hold dear to your heart? Naruto opened his mouth to answer but suddenly closed it in silent thought. What was it that he held dear? He had been alone for a good portion of his life as his parents decided to raise him away from the world. Would it be his memories? Yes, it was one of the purest moments in his life, the memories of his childhood with his mother and father, both who loved him and molded him into what he was today. The memories of the two that I love. A snort was heard, but it didn't come from death. Memories? Memories are your driving motivation? Boy, things as fleeting as memories will not keep you strong, nor will they push you for something greater. People die every day, hatchling, and millions of people break from the memories of those they have lost. Memories are more dangerous than they are good. Child, do not base your motivations and path on something as fleeting as memories. Hearing the reply, Naruto felt the need to interject before he was interrupted. You are wrong. Oh, I am? Then enlighten me as to what it is that makes me wrong. Questioned Death's symbiotic partner. Memories are very powerful motivational anchors. Kingdoms and revolutions have been started upon the backs of memories. Finished D while getting his steed to move forward. The stallion had finally calmed down from being in its stall for so long. It's always better to control a calm horse instead of a rowdy one. What do you mean? Questioned Naruto as his Death symbiotic partner looked at him as well, wondering what he meant. In our first battle, I drank some of your blood to sate my own awakened powers, and I saw your memories and felt the emotions you felt as if I were you. You hold them in high esteem and regard, but they are not what pushes you to strength. You were born powerful and they groomed you to tame that power, and they did it through love and intense training, but it was hard for you to fathom what it really meant to wield power. That understanding is what drives you to power. You simply want to understand what it was that happened to them, and what their power has done to them. You know what they raised you to be and what it is that would make them proud. It is those memories that cement that for him. We are all slaves to the whims of our families. Finished Death as he looked at Naruto out of the corner of his eye, seeing that the boy understood the message in his words. Hearing those words, Naruto looked at his sensei, feeling as if Death understood his path and his motivations, almost as if the man walked the road himself and was still on the road. With that, Naruto remained silent, walking beside the pale rider, wondering where is it that they were in fact heading to. It had been a little over a year since his training began under Death, and Naruto could feel his power was massively improved from his first day within the Primordia's care. Sparring with his monster of a sensei every day truly improved his battle instincts and combat forms. After the subsequent morning ass-kicking, as Death's symbiotic friend coined it, the follow-up training and review session helped Naruto to improve his technique, release, and control of his elements. But he had recently been forced to rely solely on his hand-to-hand combat skill in the event that proves to be a perfect counter to his elemental abilities, which in this world of mythological creatures is highly likely. His skills in martial arts proved to be quite lacking, leading to his sensei to focus heavily upon that field of study, really opening the boy's eyes to one of his glaring weaknesses. But today was different. First sensei just comes to his door to tell him that they were leaving in 5 minutes. They hadn't even sparred today, and now he was off with his sensei following along on the adventure. After an unspecified amount of time, Naruto turned his head to his sensei and asked, "Where are we heading to, sensei?" Before D could respond, a growling was heard which caused Naruto to turn his head in dry annoyance as he stared ahead towards what was growling in his presence. In front of them stood a giant 3-headed dog with long strong legs, fur as dark as the smoke that filtered through its mouth, the flames of hatred seen in its eyes as it looked upon those that trifled in its master's domain. Suddenly a hissing sound was heard, and Naruto moved his annoyed eyes slightly to the left to look at what in these depraved lands was hissing at him, and his sensei he came upon the appearance of a vicious serpent colored the same black as the monstrous hellhound's fur, with chilling azure eyes glaring at Naruto specifically. Standing before Naruto in Death was Cerberus, the hellish offspring of 2 of Greece's most feared monsters, Typhon and Echidna, Hades' personal pet and the guard of the underworld. Staring at the beast, Naruto blinked in a lazy manner and looked back to his sensei. "There's a mutt standing in our way." Ignoring the bristling growl from Cerberus, Death looked at his student for a second and descended from his horse and slowly walked towards the giant beast of legend. Becoming more and more savage, Cerberus' mouth began to foam with anger as the dog began to bark and the serpent hissed a ghastly noise that nearly made Naruto cut the beast down. Stopping right in front of the guardian of the underworld, D lifted his palm upward to the beast and waited calmly. As expected, the hellhound growled viciously and lowered its 3 heads. Naruto could truly see how large the beast was compared to his sensei. The large spear-like teeth were the same size as Death standing at full height. The ginormous beast and its 3 head all lowered themselves and sniffed a couple times with each head, and the beast leaned the snout of his middle head into the hand and received a nice rub from Death. "Is your master here?" Nodding its 3 heads, the calm guard dog laid down on the ground and placed its 3 heads over top of its large paws and watched the 3 individuals. Nodding his head, Death turned back towards his stallion and student. Mounting his beloved horse, Death turned towards Naruto. "You should learn to be kinder to such creatures. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar." With that, D and his pale horse walked past the guard dog on the road once again. Keeping his dry stare on the back of his sensei, Naruto walked, and caught up to his sensei, walking in calm silence, merely listening to the sound of hooves hitting the ground. Naruto began to look around all the black leaves on the trees lining the dirt road beside them, sensing all the eyes on him and his sensei. He looked over and asked, "Why are we coming to meet Hades?" "What makes you think that we've come to meet Hades?" questioned Death. "The fact that Cerberus was guarding the path to the underworld, and I can sense a slight bit of irritation on my skin. It feels much like entering the realm of the Greeks." "You've entered the Greek realm before?" Surprise was obvious in the tone of his sensei to those that have become accustomed to learning the emotions in Death's stoic tone. "My mother is a phoenix, one of the most mentioned species within the supernatural world, and she had a close relationship with the god Apollo during the glory days of ancient Greece. He used to come by and visit her when I was a baby, and when Tusan was off doing something, she said he always enjoyed her cooking and singing," finished Naruto while looking ahead, ignoring the stares on him. They were merely the eyes and ears of their master. Hearing the explanation, D remained silent as the two continued on their journey towards the lair of Hades. Within another 10 minutes, master and student arrived in front of Humongous Mountain. Looking up, Death dismounted from his pale steed and gave the pale stallion a nod that sent the horse back the other in blinding speeds. "Now what?" questioned Naruto, still looking up to the mountain that seemed to touch the red sky of the underworld. Such a dreary thing to look up at. Humans were so lucky being able to look up to a beautiful sun, blue sky with white clouds lazing about in the day, and at night they stare upon the stars of space with the beauty of the moon shining across the earth. Death looked to his left and back up to the mountain. "It's obvious we will fly to the top. Hades knows we're here anyway. He is probably waiting for us now." Naruto turned to his sensei to see the man floating off the ground, looking only at the sky, waiting to ascend to the top of the mountain. Naruto could feel his sensei's eyes on him even as the man wasn't looking at him. He was waiting for him to sprout his wings and fly to meet the god of the dead. With that, Naruto turned his head back and relaxed his body, slowly allowing the muscles in his back to relax, and soon with a quick rush from his back they appeared. Smoothly bypassing the back of his kimono as if it weren't even there, wings as dark as an abyss came forth. Unlike most draconian wings, which resemble bat wings, these were feathered. Some could even mistake them for the wings of a fallen angel with their appearance. Upon the wings and feathers were flame-like markings colored pale gold, vermilion red and azure blue, constantly flowing, reminiscent of blood flowing throughout the body. Such vibrant colors contrasted upon the dark wings made for a truly beautiful sight. The wings were massive. Fully unfurled, the wings would be larger than Naruto. They were magnificent to look at. Death looked back at Naruto and looked at the boy's wings and nodded his head in approval of what he saw. With that, they were ready. Without further delay, Naruto and D shot from the ground up to the top of the mountain to meet the god of hell. Hades' days have been quite boring lately with the subsequent ceasefire of the 3 Christian factions. It was so entertaining watching those crows and bats kill each other in the underworld. Those annoyances were only ever good at providing him entertainment when they were killing each other, especially with the death of the biblical god that really made the war boring for Hades. No matter his disagreement with the existence of other pantheons, he couldn't deny the respect he held for the perished deity. Someone has gotten past Cerberus? I wonder who has come to grace me with their visit. I hope it isn't Demeter trying to get her daughter again. Soon as the thought played in his divine mind, his most trusted reaper appeared before him with robes as dark as a black hole, down on one knee, not moving a single inch. Even his scythe was held in perfect stillness in front of his master and lord. Hades stared down at one of his strongest reapers with pride oozing from his visible bones. Pluto was the reaper's name. Many of Hades' reapers and other supernatural pantheons who met him called him the ultimate reaper and the next in line should Hades ever fall. That last thought almost made the underworld king snort in arrogance. He fall? Foolish, never shall he fall. He was Hades, the god of the underworld. But he did acknowledge the power and prestige that the Reaper earned and used at the discretion of his lord, which is why he was named Pluto. The name the Romans gave him when they conquered Greece. Now that was an interesting development that Hades enjoyed watching thoroughly. Before the god could get lost within his own monologues of history, he looked to the still kneeling Reaper and spoke. Who has come to my domain, Pluto? The Pale Rider has come, my lord, and he has brought a companion with him, reported Pluto in a stoic voice. Hearing whom it was that was coming put Hades upon high alert. Why was Death walking among the worlds like that? Such activities were very unusual for the solitary deity. Death was a being that preferred to stay away from the world and allow others to do his work. Death was the very personification of the idea of life ceasing to exist, and so Death never preferred to be around beings that were alive. But there had been many beings to wield the title of Death. What many do not know is that Death isn't one distinct entity. Anyone can come to claim the title of Death from the current wearer if they can kill the previous owner of the title. Those that wore the title were quite arrogant beings that believed since they bore the name Death they were above all others. Such fools them all, but all that changed when he came along. No one in the world knew where that man came from or his origins, but many could not say they had met someone so imposing and befitting of the title of Death. The man looked no older than 18, but he walked with the confidence and grace of a prince that walked the world many times over. Someone certainly worthy of wearing the title of Death. Ah, they are here. Who is that Death has brought with him, I wonder? Pluto opened the path directly linking toward this throne room. You know how Death can be when his patience is tested. Spoke Hades in a calm voice. At once, my lord. Standing slowly, Pluto rose to his full height and adjusted the scythe in his hand and tapped the ground twice, and a portal opened behind Pluto, causing the ultimate Reaper to move out of the way to allow the two arriving guests. Stepping through the large portal, both Naruto and he came upon a large throne room with a staircase leading up to a throne built of silver and gold. Naruto looked up from the throne itself to stare at the god of this barren wasteland known as the realm of the dead. Naruto saw a giant connected skeleton that wore garbs associated to priests of ancient Greece. The aura that exuded from the being was disgusting yet immensely powerful that it made Naruto wonder how he would fare against the being seated above upon the throne. Naruto looked at the Reaper that stood beside his master with scythe in hand, a blade waiting to be used by its master. There was no doubt in Naruto's mind that if Hades commanded it, the Reaper beside him would strike at Death and himself with no thought of his own existence. Naruto returned his eyes to the god on the throne and waited to see, as he was simply a companion. Death's in this meeting, he didn't feel it was his place to speak. Hades looked at Death and saw that chilling stoic expression on the face of the man, the pure beauty of darkness wrapped into one being. But standing beside him was one that was the real peak of his curiosity. The boy felt familiar to the god, but he couldn't place it. No matter, he had other things to worry about now rather than why the child was so familiar to him. Now this is quite the surprise, to have Death enter into my palace and grace me with his chilling presence. To what do I owe the pleasure? Questioned Hades, staring at the beautiful man known to the world as Death. Taking a small step forward, he looked to Hades. Where does the father of monsters reside, Hades? To the untrained eye, one would see that Hades had no reaction to the question, but to Death he could see the surprise waft from Hades' bones. Before answering, Hades' skull slightly turned in the direction of Naruto and returned to Death. That is a being lost to the sands of time. Death slain by my brother with the remains blown to ashes. What do you have need for ashes? You lie, Hades. Hades' eye sockets narrowed upon hearing that statement. To question the integrity of a god was quite insulting, and Hades, being the prideful god that he was, felt quite insulted by the claim presented against him. Death, do not make such claims so lightly. You know it is a heavy crime to claim a god to lie. But I bear no such lies. The father of monsters was slain by my brother in a world-shaking battle that almost wiped the world clean of all living creatures. You know the history of this battle. That is why I say you lie, Hades. You and I both know your power stands above both your brothers Zeus and Poseidon. Being the strongest of the Greek gods, even you could not kill the father of beasts without your brother's help. Even with that, I can't feel the spirit of the beast in my domain, nor do I feel it within your grasp. So, if the beast's soul does not lay in your grasp, nor does he belong to me or purgatory, then tell me, where is it that you and your brothers chose to seal the monster that terrified the world with its monstrous size and offspring? Finished he with a slight narrowing in his sharp eyes as he saw Hades' Reaper take a step forward and tighten his grip on his scythe. He didn't even register the Reaper as someone of worth or interest. He was sure Naruto at the stage of his training could keep the child occupied without too much effort. Hades looked to Death and tried to comprehend the reasoning for why he would want that creature. It made no sense at all, and Hades would be damned if he revealed the whereabouts of that monster's seal that was a beast that terrified even Hades in his younger days as a god. Death, surely there is something else I can acquiesce to you other than the whereabouts of that monster, perhaps my beautiful wife Persephone? Surely one such as your. Hades, I do not desire her. I desire the resting place of Typhon. Tell me where the seal lies, or I will search for the seal myself, and when I find it, nothing good shall come of it. Finished D in an annoyed tone that sent warning bells throughout everyone in the room. For Naruto, this was a first to see his usually cold sensei openly express an emotion, especially a negative emotion. Nothing good would come from Death's patience being tested by this god. Hades was surprised by the demands of the one before him. The level of annoyance rolling off Death was palpable. It was a first seeing the man show such displeasure from Death. Pluto prepared himself to cut down both intruders here even if one was death. He refused to accept such disrespect towards his lord even if it was the pale rider that was the offender. A moment of silence passed between the occupants of the room. The silence was deafening for everyone in the room, and the atmosphere was tense. The standoff would have continued if there wasn't a chuckle that rebounded around the room, the source being Hades himself, as he finally calmed down and spoke. I never thought I would see the day when death would openly express an emotion. Living as a god truly does gift you such luxurious, it seems. Sicily is where the creature resides, that is all I will say on that matter. Finished Hades in a steel tone, daring death to challenge him. Hades did not know who would win between himself and death, but he would not be intimidated in his own castle in front of his subordinates in such a way. Nodding his head in approval, Death turned around and began to leave before his was interrupted by the voice of Hades. Will you not introduce your companion beside you, Death? Turning back to Hades for a second, Death looked Naruto in the eyes and continued to walk away without even verbally acknowledging the question. Naruto understood what Death was saying with his eyes. It was his choice if he wished to speak to the Lord of the Underworld. With the message delivered, and turned towards the throne and spoke in a calm tone. Hello Lord Hades, I am Naruto, it is a pleasure to meet you. Finished Naruto with a slight dip of his head. Likewise, young Naruto, what is the reason for your traveling with Death, if I may ask? Usually Death is such a loner, so to see him accompanied by someone leads me to believe there is a special reason for such actions. Finished Hades with intrigue oozing throughout his being to learn the existence of the boy and what his relation to Death is. Naruto looked at Hades for a moment, and then back to the disappearing form of his master. He already left the mansion and returned to the base of the mountain. Naruto could feel where his sensei departed. Such sensing capabilities were afforded to Naruto, the ability to feel wherever in the world Death goes, dependent upon his focus and desire to find Death. Naruto looked back to Hades and smiled a calm, almost teasing smile to the god of the dead. Who knows, you'd have to ask him. It was an honor meeting you and your lovely wife, Lord Hades. Finished Naruto with a calm smile as he looked beside the throne where a walkway was, and behind the wall was a tuft of black hair that bristled upon being caught. Seeing the reaction caused Naruto to laugh as he allowed his control over the wind to take him away from the inside of the castle and to stand beside his idol once again. After a few moments of staring at the spot, Hades spoke. That boy is someone we will have to keep a close eye on. Pluto turned to look at his master and spoke. Do you really believe him to be someone of interest, my lord? He didn't seem so special to me. That boy walks beside Death almost as if he were a pupil. Death sees the boy as someone of worth. Get used to that name, my Reaper. That name will shake the world every time it is uttered if my prediction is right. Finished Hades as he rose from his throne. He needed to go get his wife. Spring was starting to come around and soon she would be out of his grasp, and he was going to make the most of their time together. Appearing beside his master in a light breeze, Naruto looked over at his sensei petting Cerberus as the dog slumbered and looked to be in heaven. Turning around, he looked at his pupil and walked towards his student and spoke. What did Hades ask you? Still looking at his sensei, he wanted to know who I was and why I was traveling with you. With only a slight hum, Death continued to walk back to his mansion with Naruto beside him, both walking in comfortable silence, looking straight ahead. Why were you looking for the father of monsters, sensei? Because you will fight him and kill him, spoke D, looking straight ahead at the barren wasteland that was the underworld. Hearing the plan that his sensei had in mind caused Naruto to pause for a moment and look at his master as if he were crazy, which in Naruto's mind he was really starting to wonder if his master truly was crazy. You want me to fight Typhon? That is what I said, isn't it? But why, sensei? Questioned Naruto. It will serve multiple purposes, such as for your goal and for my own amusement, but that battle will come when you are ready, and right now you would die within the first minute with Typhon. Finished Death in that similar, not caring tone even when speaking about the death of his student. Hearing the tone, Naruto gave his sensei a dry stare and continued the way back to the mansion. Are we going to train today, sensei? The hatchling still wants his daily dosage of getting his ass whooped. Honestly, boy, you are a glutton for punishment, spoke the partner of Death, and Naruto couldn't help but focus on the face upon the left hand of D. Sensei, I've been meaning to ask, who is that on your left hand? Questioned Naruto with serious curiosity throughout his body. He really was curious about it. Instead of answering the question, Death just raised his left hand to face Naruto, and his partner spoke. I am Countenanced Carbuncle. I've been the partner of D over here for the past few millenniums. We've pretty much seen all the world together 1,000 times over now. Everything is so stale and boring. How old are you? I don't know. I'd say I've known this fashionless walking death trap for 10,000 years, give or take. Finished Countenance while looking at D to get confirmation of the guess. Seeing as D wasn't going confirm, Carbuncle turned back to Naruto, confused face. You always call him D, that must be Sensei's real name. Naruto nodded his head a couple of times in confirmation and acknowledgement of the new information learned about his sensei. Nay, Lefty-san. Did you just call me Lefty? Hi, your name is really a tongue twister, so I figured I'd call you Lefty for short, since you exist on Sensei's left hand. Finished Naruto as if it was the simplest thing to completely ignore addressing someone by their actual name. Carbuncle's sweat dropped at the reasoning for the recent name change and adopted an annoyed look on his face. D just shook his head at the interactions between Naruto and his partner as they continued back to the mansion. D just silently listened as Lefty, a nickname D hadn't heard in centuries, turned Naruto about different jobs and battles they had in their past before their days as death. Sounds of combat could be heard throughout the room, the sound of blades slicing through the air, the ferocious rush of fire and concrete breaking apart due to high-speed movement. Such sounds gave warriors excited chills all throughout their body. These sounds were special for them. They were the sounds that made them feel alive. For some warriors, though, they grew tired of these sounds and only desired to hear the wind blow without worrying about whether they should dodge the wind or block it. Looking inside the room, craters could be seen all throughout the room, on the floor and the walls. If one looked up and peered through the darkness that seemed to surround the vast ceiling, one could probably find craters up there as well. The desire of combat and blood was palpable in the air. Walking into the room, one could sense excitement, anger, and joy in the atmosphere. But slowly these emotions were waning, as were the sounds of blades clashing against each other. The battle was reaching its finale for the day. Suddenly a black figure was blown across the room into the wall, forming yet another crater. For a moment, the man opened his dark eyes and saw a streak of gold slice towards him. Raising his blade, the dark-eyed man stared into azure eyes. He could see bits of vermilion and gold staring back at him. Pride was the first thing Death felt looking at his pupil. Naruto had come a long way in his craft, and took to all the lessons presented to him with the mindset of a conqueror. The hybrid took to his lessons with vigor and complete focus, with the goal of mastering all that was presented to him. It was amazing to watch. Now Death understood one of the joys of life, when one can impart their wisdom and knowledge onto someone willing to learn. The next step of his prodigious pupil's training was coming into fruition slowly, especially considering the recent actions of the Red One coming into fruition. With a tightened grip upon his blade, Death pushed forward with a vicious swing that blew Naruto backwards and sent him flying into the middle of the room. Slowly Death walked out of the body-sized crater and relaxed his grip on his blade and walked toward his now standing student, looking at the blade of fire in the boy's hand. One of Naruto's strongest abilities was his ability to manipulate the elements and pure energy. Such skill allowed him to create weapons such as the blade in his hand. Those elemental blades were very durable and finely crafted. One could mistake them for being swords made of metal merely covered in fire, true pieces of art. But they were still blades of fire that could be countered easily if the right measures were implemented, no matter the blade being a combination of phoenix and dragon fire. Sensei. Acknowledging the call, D looked at his student and waited for the reason why the boy has spoken during their training session. Such actions usually didn't occur, seeing as how both himself and Naruto were quiet individuals, especially during combat. I've been thinking, spoke Naruto with a contemplative look on his face, staring at his master and idol. Death didn't respond to the announcement, seeing as how there was no need to. Naruto hadn't completed his entire thought, and he wanted to buy some time to think of a new strategy. My dependence on my elements to substitute as weapons is a crutch. I need some weapons not made from my elemental manipulation, finished Naruto while staring at his master. With silence, he pondered the idea. He was considering crafting his pupil a weapon or two anyway, seeing as how Naruto was right. That dependence can be a bit of a killer. Also, it would be a nice gift for his pupil. I can assume that one of these weapons is a sword, seeing as how you always use an elemental blade whenever given the opportunity, finished Death. Nodding in agreement to the truth that was presented to him by his sensei. It was true, he loved using a blade. Swordsmanship was such a beautiful art to witness and to perform, and nothing made Naruto feel more at peace than wielding a blade in his hands. I have an idea for two weapons that I would like to be crafted for myself. As you know, one is a sword and the other is something that appeared to me in a dream once, finished Naruto. What two weapons does my student have in mind? Questioned Death. After hearing the confession, Death found this to be interesting. The possibilities of what Naruto could come up with interested him more than anything, seeing how Naruto was quite a creative person when the skill is called upon. Without responding, Naruto's right eye started to glow softly and a bright mist started to flow out into the middle of the room and morph, slowly growing larger and more focused. This was a spell that Death taught Naruto after the young hybrid asked to watch some of Death's earlier battles in life, during the days where he wasn't a primordial that shook the very heavens whenever his name was spoken of. From the mist, two objects were coming into fruition. After a minute of complete silence, the images were able to be completely seen. Those would suit his fighting style well and also make his combinations quite interesting, thought Death in silence for a moment. In the next moment, The images started to fade away into the air and the soft glow of Naruto's eye diminished, acknowledging the end of his technique. Death sheathed his blade and began walking towards the door of the training room. Just as he reached the door, Death spoke. "Our session is over for the day. You have the rest of the day to yourself. Do as you so wish." With his peace said, Death left the room swiftly. With the recent announcement, Naruto stood still in his spot for a moment and looked over towards the door in contemplation. Since he was free today, maybe he should go out and leave this desolate mansion and travel around the underworld. Maybe he could find some greenery in this world. With a shrug of his shoulders, Naruto used his control of the wind to envelope him and take him away from the training room and the mansion itself. Death suddenly appeared in front of the stable that held his trusted steed. Without a moment of hesitation, Death hopped upon his horse and was on the road with a purpose. The Red Rider was leaving his flaming touch all over the world, both human and supernatural. War was raging across the world and causing nothing but mayhem. For Death, usually the actions of the other horsemen didn't really concern him nor interest him, as all their actions did was just bring more souls into his domain. But this time he would indulge in the actions of one of the riders, seeing as how these actions could be beneficial to him. Within all societies, conflict is a constant function exhibited no matter the circumstances, whether one lives as an animal, human, or supernatural. For animals, combat establishes societal standing, eating rights, mating rights, and creates the balance of survival for each species. Animals fight because it is instinctive. It is in their nature to kill and to feel no remorse for the animal that it has been killed, because to a predator, prey is merely a means to continued survival. For humans, conflict is essential, as it can be used as a motivational boost and a way to break past the conscious limits that humanity places upon themselves, as well as being a corporeal part of staying alive. Just like with animals, humans use conflict to establish and create boundaries among each other to distinguish different rights and ownership of specific territories, food, and even merely for entertainment or pleasure. Conflict is instinctive but shunned amongst the ranks of humans. Conflict is seen as a negative reaction to the world and the inhabitants of the world. To devils, conflict was a celebrated and embraced ideology. The strong were celebrated and revered in society. Lucifer, Beelzebub, Leviathan, and Asmodeus, the four great Satans, the strongest devils within all of existence, were chosen to lead all of devil society. The four were the strongest devils in existence. They are the leaders and archetypes of what it means to be devils. The great four were hailed as monarchs, and their words and beliefs were followed by all of devil kind. Those desires for a world dominated by devils lead to combat against the fallen angels and the angels of God. The Great War, that was the name of the ensuing chaos that the great Satans brought upon the Judeo-Christian faction. In the beginning, when Lucifer announced the plan to conquer the world with the powers of the 72 pillar families and the legions of devils following behind him and the other Mao, devil society celebrated and sung in agreement to these ideas. The idea of a world dominated by devils created images of pure ecstasy for many devils as they envisioned themselves rulers of the world. This war was seen as something that must happen for devils, and once the war actually started, many believed that they would finally be respected and revered by all. But slowly, as the war dragged on, and once devils started to witness the extinction of pillar families, the taste for a world controlled by devils waned slowly. Eventually, the fallen angels had pulled out of the war because of the loss of so many of their kind. It was honestly foolish of them to even step into the battle in the first place. Seeing as how the fallen had the smallest population count, getting into a three-way world war wouldn't be very prosperous. Even the angels of God and devils saw what the war was doing to their kin, and both sides desired the end of this war. It was only with the death of the Great Four at the hands of God did the Great War truly end, but descendants of the previous Satans and their followers wanted the ideals of their ancestors realized. A rift was formed within devil society, as many of the remaining 33 pillars believed that the potential extinction of their houses wasn't worth the risk of taking over the world. This rift created two separate political and militarized factions among devil society: the anti-Satan faction and the old Satan faction. Led by the descendants of 3 of the original 4 Satans, the old Satan faction became a horde of bloodthirsty, greedy creatures hell-bent on taking over the world they believed to be theirs. In reaction, the anti-Satan faction placed their belief and loyalty upon the back and power of Zekrom Baal, also upon the backs of 4 monstrously powerful young devils: Ajuka Astaroth, Falbium Glycoilabilis, Seraphal Leviathan, and Serzex Gremory. These 5 were the leaders and the pride of the anti-Satan faction. Slowly walking through a forest residing on Gremory lands was a handsome man that physically looked to be in his 20s, standing at 6 feet tall. The man had unblemished alabaster skin that seemed to have a soft, healthy glow, vibrant and eye-catching crimson-red shoulder-length hair with 2 bangs reaching down past his collarbone was seen on the man's head. The man had a pair of blue-green seafoam eyes that held warmth, love, confidence, and power. Dressed in clothing fit for a noble of the purest blood, Serzex was walking through this forest to get away. He wanted to get away from the pressure and responsibility placed upon him as the heir of the Gremory clan, as the inheritor of the great king's power of destruction, as the ace of the anti-Satan faction. When he was younger, his father told him that with his extraordinary power and control over his power, he would become a focal point in Devil's society. But it was all too much to the heir. At times it was suffocating to be thrust into the spotlight in such a way and in such dire circumstances. That's why he had to get away for a little bit and clear his head away from his family and subordinates, simply just some alone time for himself. As the thought of peace and quiet was rolling around in his head, he felt an energy signature within the forest. Looking up ahead in the direction of mountains that resided inside of Gremry territory, that's where Surzex could feel the unknown power source coming from. This was something he needed to investigate. Random intruders upon these lands was something in this war-filled time Surzex refused to allow. It was all so quiet. He never really was given days like these anymore to actually sit down and reflect on how things had progressed in his life. The calm, still water of the lake before him reflected the red sky that hung above his head. Such a sight always gave this place quite the dark and monstrous visage, nothing like the sky of the human world. The clear blue sky of the day, the flaming orange of dusk, or the tranquil obsidian blue of the night. Someone should change the sky so it didn't look so vicious and bloodthirsty, but then again, the home will always reflect the mindset of the master. Shifting his eyes to the right, there was movement within the forest. His ears told him something was coming. His nose told him it was a devil. The devil's scent was becoming stronger, and was relaying more information. This devil was of pure blood. He smelled of ashes and carnage forged in battle, but the devil also smelled tired and frustrated. This was an interesting devil, and from the way the devil's energy was moving throughout its body, this visit was out of curiosity and caution. It seems he has trespassed upon someone's territory. Soon enough, stepping into the clearing, Surzex looked out onto the lake and for a moment just stood there, becoming acclimated to the environment around him. Within a moment his head turned to the left, and it was there that he saw the person that was trespassing upon Gremry property. The intruder was someone he had never seen before. Based upon physical appearance, he would say the man was a member of the Phoenix clan with his long golden-colored hair and blazing blue eyes. But on further inspection, Surzex could see that the mysterious man's hair was lighter than a Phoenix clan member's, with streaks of vermilion red mingled throughout. For a second he thought that a Gremry clan member and a Phoenix clan member came together to birth a child, but he quickly killed that thought. All of Devil Society would know of such a union of devil houses. Will you continue to stare at me in such a rude way, or will you actually introduce yourself, Akuma-san? Startled from his thoughts by the smooth voice, Surzex's eyes locked onto the mysterious man's own heterochromatic eyes. Now, in the scope of supernatural existences, the Gremry heir wasn't the oldest or wisest being to ever live, very far from it. But he knew enough and was experienced enough in the ways and culture of power to know that the man in front of him wasn't to be trifled with. The man's power was akin to a tsunami. It almost swallowed and drowned Surzex with its ferociousness and ruthlessness. But there was also a refined elegance to the power. When Naruto locked eyes with the sea foam orbs of the Gremry, his sensory abilities began to go off. Naruto could feel the chaotic power within the devil. The power was itching to taste the air. It wanted to rip everything asunder and to wreak havoc on the land, even the world. But instead of lashing out and fighting for freedom, it stayed calm and waited as if it were a well-trained dog in the presence of its master. When a person wields immense levels of power, it becomes very difficult to chain the power and to control it. Many are too weak physically to contain the power and are inevitably destroyed by their own power, and others are too weak mentally and become controlled by their own power and begin to be filled with arrogance and ignorance in belief that their power strikes fear in the hearts of all around them. But there is a class of people born with immense power and with the physical and mental tools needed to actually handle the weight of that power and even control it. The two warriors could sense that they were of the same rare class. It was that knowledge that gave Surzex a sense of wariness, because he did not know where this mysterious man's allegiances lied with, and for Naruto it made his blood rush and his battle instincts slowly began to react. Being a dragon gave you to desire to fight immensely powerful foes, and Naruto was no exception. Shaking from his stasis and quickly regaining his trademarked composure, Surzex spoke. You're right, it is rude to stare. Forgive me, my name is Surzex, Gremry heir to the House of Gremry. Might I ask who it is that you are, and why is that you are trespassing on my family's lands? In light of recent developments and initiations of war, an owner of these lands could take trespassing as an attack on their person. Finished Surzex with a suave calmness aided by a small smile that gave Naruto an underlying sense of a threat. The devil had the gall to threaten him. This was very promising. So it seems I've trespassed upon someone's territory. Oh well, perhaps I'll gain some entertainment from this interaction. With a mental shrug from his supposed disrespectful actions, he took a moment to collect his thoughts, and then spoke. My name is Naruto, and my sensei decided to give me an early release from our usual training session and gave me the day off, so I thought it'd be a good idea to find some of the greener parts of this dreary realm. Finished Naruto nonchalantly. Seriously, the underworld was such a desolate-looking place. It damned near sucked the life out of everyone who entered in this wretched realm. Just looking up at the bloody sky for too long could drive someone into madness and needless bloodlust. Looking up at the sky for a moment, Surzex couldn't help but nod. Indeed, that is something I truly despise about living here. The sky always gave off the feeling of despair, wrath, and pure anger, like a permanent cloud of negativity. Finished Surzex as an afterthought. Looking to the sky as well, Naruto spoke. As they say, the home shall always reflect upon the mindset of the master. The original masters of this world are a group of vile and nasty beings filled with vengeance and anger. Now the sky seems to be blazing in fire in response to the devil's desire to burn this world. Finished Naruto with his eyes slightly shifting over to Surzex. Something nasty is indeed brewing. As I mentioned earlier, there is a war coming. It is a war over the direction of my people and over the fate of our continued existence. Some of us are too stuck in the ancient ways that they've become obsessed with things such as the purity of our blood or birth rights of our people. They believe, since they are descended of the original four, that the world belongs to them. Surzex shook his head and sighed from the thoughts about his own foolish people. It seems that you are struggling in the midst of this oncoming war. Why not just ignore it? You hold no obligation to these people other than your family. Convince them to worry more for their money and interests, and deny fighting in this war. Finished Naruto while looking at Surzex, assessing how receptive he was to the suggestion. He heard many things about this species from his sensei. It was time to see if they were true. Hearing the suggestion, Surzex couldn't help but shake his head in disagreement to that idea. No, I could never do that, not when people that I have grown with and eaten with are out there standing and fighting for the future of our people. They look to me as one of the beacons of hope for a better future for our people, our families, and as a bridge to creating a new world for devils. A new future where we could possibly coexist with the fallen and possibly with angels. A future where those that are lucky enough can happily conceive and bring new devils into this world. To create a world where the sky inspires us and instills wonder and creativity in our hearts, instead of filling us with pain, anguish, and madness. The Crimson Heir paused for a moment to finish his thoughts. It's for these reasons that I cannot tell my house to evacuate from this war. I must bring this change for us, and with my power and their faith in me I will. Finished the legendary heir of the Gremory house with a sharp, determined glint in his eyes and his hand tightly clenched. His family and race were about to enter into the war that would signify their survival, and he refused to allow his people to die. He would destroy this world itself if it came to that. It seems he is a special breed among them, thought Naruto while rising to his feet and slowly stretching out his body. He had been sitting for a couple of hours before the heir of these lands appeared. The desire to ensure the safety of his family, the instinct to continue to fight for what he believed in, and the resolve to destroy everything in his path to ensure everything that he loved would survive. Seeing that look intrigued Naruto. These were the eyes of someone who had something to protect, something to hold dear and to cherish. You fight for their future? Questioned Naruto, as he had curiosity shining in his multicolored eyes. Without missing a beat, yes, my friends and family, they are the reason I train so hard and work tirelessly to perfect my power so I can protect all that I hold close to my heart. My father told me once, in life, no matter the species, be it human, devil, deity, or even dragon, when a person has something that they must protect, a special phenomenon occurs and that person becomes filled with a great resolve to ensure the protection of the one they care for the most. It is in that moment when one has true power. Surzex finished as a small tranquil smile arrived on his face as memories of his friends and family appeared in his mind. Such lovely smiles, the sounds of joyous laughter, the warmth he felt around all of them was something he wouldn't change for anything in this world. Show me. Startled out of his reminiscing, Surzex looked at Naruto. What? I said show me your resolve to protect them, show me your desire to ensure their happiness, show me that you will destroy this world should you lose them. Naruto turned towards Surzex and looked him in the eyes. He wanted to experience what his resolve was like, how powerful someone with a purpose could be. Hearing the request and seeing the seriousness in Naruto's eyes, Surzex spoke with all the seriousness needed in this situation. As tempting as that would be, from the amount of power I can feel that you wield, which I dare say is comparable to my very own, it would be quite catastrophic for this forest and the surrounding area. Which I will remind you is my family's own property, and we are in times of war. It's safe to say that a fight between yourself and me wouldn't be the greatest idea. Finished Surzex. A battle with Naruto was something the red-haired heir had no problem participating in because it would be fun to test himself against an opponent he never met nor heard of but had power that was comparable to his own. But instinct told him that if he indulged Naruto here, then it would send chaos all throughout the underworld and lead to a lot of annoying questions. Hearing the response, Naruto kneeled on the ground and placed his palm flat upon the surface of the water and released a surge of energy that spread all throughout the forest and mountains. Within the depths of the mountains were the ancient culminations of power given physical form, and the leader of these beings was just awakened by the recent usage of power. Whose power is this? I should look into whomever this newcomer is. With that last thought, a lavender-colored eye opened in the darkness in search of the newest intruder. Surzex eyed the kneeling blonde confusedly after feeling the strange surge of energy released, and he was hoping to gain an answer to his confusion. "What was that just now, if you don't mind me asking, Naruto-san?" Hearing the question, "That was me placing a seal on the surrounding forest and mountains that will prevent the sounds and exposure of our released energy. Simply put, during our battle none shall hear nor feel our power unless they cross the boundaries that I have placed upon the surrounding area," finished Naruto while looking at Surzex expectantly. Hearing the explanation, the devil couldn't help but laugh. "It seems that he has no choice now, I see. Well then, I will agree to this request, but I have a stipulation that must be agreed upon for me to participate fully in this fight," spoke Surzex with interest and amusement twinkling in his eyes. Naruto couldn't help but sigh at hearing the words out of the Duke's mouth. "Of course there's a stipulation. All right then, what is it that you have in mind?" "Should I defeat you, you will come and fight with me and the anti-Satan faction in this upcoming war," spoke Surzex with a devilishly sly grin on his face. Hearing the stipulation interested Naruto. To join into a war he had no business taking part in? Maybe he could meet people that are as powerful as Surzex, and besides, all he's been doing is training. What was wrong with actually putting his training into a fight he could actually win? He saw nothing wrong in the outcome. Either way, he gets to enjoy a good fight, while also he gets to alleviate some boredom he'd been feeling lately. Also, I could begin to understand what he means. "I accept those stipulations, Surzex Gremory." With his agreement of the deal, Naruto took a moment to think about anything that he wanted as a counter to the deal, but discovered he had no such counter. He desired nothing from the red-headed heir, except the excitement of a worthy battle. Surzex's instinct began to go off as he looked at Naruto, and he could feel the air around the blonde begin to shift. He could feel an oppressive aura begin to permeate through the air, and it was coming from the man that was standing in front of him. "It seems this man is more interesting than I originally believed." As a warrior of great power, Surzex was sensitive to the slightest of changes within the atmosphere. It was a trait all seasoned and experienced fighters learn to hone. Right now, that instinct was telling him that the fight that he just agreed to was going to be a fight that he likely wouldn't be able to walk away from with his health perfectly intact. But in this stage of his life, the fights that matter the most one rarely gets to walk away from in perfect health. "We won't fight here in this forest. If my assumptions about you are correct, a fight of this magnitude would be too destructive to hold in such a beautiful and serene area." Naruto paused for a moment and looked towards the mountains that he originally came to see and spoke with confidence that told of his belief in his victory. "We will dance in those mountains, that we can be destructive as possible while preserving nature," finished Naruto as he stared at the mountains. Before Surzex could even utter a word, both he and Naruto disappeared from the beautiful lake, causing not even a ripple in the body of water. Within a moment, Naruto and Surzex appeared within the mountains that were previously mentioned, and after a moment to become acclimated towards the stage selected, both warriors looked towards each other. There was no need to speak anymore. Honestly, nothing more needed or could be said. This moment in time was a mere coincidence. This battle that was to occur in mere moments was something neither of the competitors expected to receive today. But neither one could claim to be upset or disappointed with the new development, far from it in fact. For Surzex, this was an interesting experience all around, meeting this powerful, mysterious man out of the blue. Someone that possessed reserves of power that neared his very own wasn't something he could really ignore. Amongst devils, only Ajuka came close to rivaling him in terms of power. Then again, there is the son of Lucifer lurking around somewhere. Surzex didn't know much about the apparent son of the Mao, but he heard the stories of his power exceeding anything devils had ever seen before. Many believed he would be the strongest devil to ever exist, but that soon changed with the birth of himself and Ajuka. But now, it seems he will get the chance to actually cut loose a little bit and fight to his heart's content. The air was stirring in anticipation as the two warriors stood across from each other. Slowly they let their powers seep from their bodies into the atmosphere in acknowledgement of one another. Their power pushing and familiarizing. This was a battle before the battle began, a test of wills one could equate it to. The air became more violent as the atmosphere became more saturated with each warrior's essence and will. If the barrier Naruto erected wasn't intact all across the underworld, everyone would be able to feel the level of power being released. Surzex's power could be described as tamed destruction, the desire to eradicate all that stood in his way without anything to hinder it. The power to destroy everything in his path, but the control to only destroy what he needed to. This was the story the Gremory's power told. Naruto could feel the energy almost rejoice as its chains were being loosened and the master of destruction finally allowed his pet to breathe more freely. Naruto's power could be described as nature. It was as if nature itself was standing with him and willing to annihilate anything he wanted. The wind felt as if it was a knight standing at attention waiting to be commanded by its king to eradicate all enemies. Lighting was felt shooting across the ground and the air was pulsing in electric bliss. serpents of lighting with a hiss that cracked like thunder were hunting for their next prey. Surzex was astounded by the feeling radiating from the man across from him. It was almost overwhelming, but more so exhilarating to be in its presence. Then, the descendant of Baal and Gremry could feel the temperature in the area increase. All around Naruto's body, wisps of flames could be seen around his body. It was as if wind and lighting were two seals being removed and the seal being was becoming adjusted to the new environment, but when the fire came, the third metaphorical seal was released. Naruto was in bliss right now. Whenever he could allow his energy to be free and to run rampant in and around his body, it was always comforting to him. Surzex saw the energy around Naruto calm down, and so he relaxed himself. Now it was time to begin. Within moments, both fighters shot towards each other. Surzex swung his right fist out to test the water. Sliding to his right, Naruto clenched his fist and went into the midsection of the devil, striking a strong blow and following into a snap kick with his left leg, sending the red-haired devil flying. Seeing his flying opponent, Naruto disappeared in a high-speed movement to catch his prey. Appearing on Surzex's right side, he aimed a kick towards the back of the air. Having enough of being attacked, Surzex applies a magic seal on his back and used it as a shield and also a platform. Jumping quickly, Surzex turns to Naruto and disappears in a show of speed and sends a kick to Naruto's right shoulder. Feeling the change of wind on his right, Naruto ducks the kick and goes to sweep the leg of his opponent, but is surprised by the sudden jump of the ace and is forced to leap backwards from the descending axe kick, aiming for the top of his head. Boom! From the ensuing dust cloud formed, Surzex searched for the energy signature of his enemy quickly, a slight shift of his left foot, and he disappeared like a bullet from the crater. Naruto tensed his muscles in preparation as he saw red and white racing towards him, but he wouldn't merely wait for his opponent this time. Rushing in comparable speeds, Naruto and Surzex clashed in a flurry of strikes, kicks, punches, elbow and knees were all thrown at each other. Surzex landed a spin kick to Naruto's midsection that sent the hybrid flying into the side of a mountain and forming a crater. Naruto snapped his head up as he felt the usage of magical energy for the first time throughout this fight, and it was about to be released towards him. Looking across, he sees a small red orb speeding towards him at fast speeds. Not needing to be told otherwise, Naruto disappeared from the crater and reappeared a distance away from Surzex and watched as the orb completely disintegrated the entire mountain. So that's the Horobai no Chikara, quite the nasty ability. Seeing the way the match was progressing, Naruto took off his cloak and sent it away in his pocket dimension. It would suck if that cloak got destroyed. It was time to begin again. The muscles in Naruto's hands tensed, and with a rush his nails became vicious claws and they were ready to pierce and rip the devil of destruction apart. With a shockwave erupting behind him, Naruto shot towards Surzex, but he had to avoid those orbs that began to float around the Master of Destruction. For the Gremry air, he was starting to get annoyed that his opponent continued to easily dodge his orbs. All Surzex saw on the makeshift battlefield was a black and gold blur buzzing around like a fly avoiding being struck by a hand. Then the black and gold blur completely disappeared. His instincts went haywire, telling him the next spot his opponent was going to appear, and looking up, Surzex saw him. Zero Metarajeta, Infinite Hollow Flash. From above, Naruto released hundreds of condensed orange beams of energy that struck the ground his opponent stood on with quickness. Quickly, Surzex leaped backwards and began directing whips of destructive energy towards the incoming attacks. As an afterthought, the redhead tried to analyze and remember the feeling that Naruto's energy gave off. All beings have distinct traits in their energy signatures that denotes the species that they are, and Naruto's signature gave off the feeling of a dragon but also of another species, and this unknown trait intrigued the Gremry. But for now, it was time to stop these beams from causing some nasty injuries. With a wave of his hand, destructive energy and hollow flashes collided, creating a rush of air and debris all around the air. He was a second too late. Turning around, Surzex unexpectedly was struck in the face by Naruto's boot. Before he could fly off, Naruto's clawed hand grasped the ankle of the devil and swung him down violently into the ground on his back. Thinking quickly, Surzex released a surge of destruction in a form similar to an electrical charge. Startled by the feeling of destruction, Naruto released the ankle and shot back to create space while looking down to inspect his now smoking hand. From within the personal-sized crater, the ultimate devil stood up and turned to his opponent and quickly reflected on the battle so far. Okay, we're even in speed, but physically he is stronger than I am. His skills in hand-to-hand combat are good, but I hold the advantage in efficiency, and he seems to be avoiding my energy blasts at all costs. Wiping the dust from his shoulder, Surzex walked forward slowly and begun releasing wisps of demonic energy from his body. It was time to use more power in this fight. Naruto quickly appeared before Surzex and aimed a kick on the chin of the red-headed devil. Parring with the back of his hand, Surzex struck with a fist towards the chest of Naruto. Slapping the hand down, Naruto went for a stab with his clawed left hand aimed at Surzex's neck, aiming to rip out the devil's Adam's apple. Slapping the clawed hand away, the redhead struck with a kick connecting at Naruto's left hip, stunning him for a moment. Following up, Surzex struck with a 3-hit combo on the chest, chin and cheek of Naruto, causing him to slide back from the force of the blows. Naruto shook the cobwebs from the last blow dealt to him, and saw that his opponent was upon him again. Surzex leaped into the air aiming for another axe kick. Crossing his arms over his head, Naruto blocked the kick but was caught under the weight of the kick, causing a tiny crater to form underneath his feet. Thinking quickly, Naruto pumped some energy to his arms to give him enough resistance and adrenaline to push his opponent into the air quickly. With a swiftness, Naruto grabbed the Crimson Devil's ankle again and sent a large amount of lightning shooting through the Gremlins' body. Gah! Surzex was in a world of pain right now with the surge of electricity coursing throughout his body. Not wanting to continue to be electrocuted, Surzex raised his right hand and collected the power of the Devil King. Sensing power, Naruto looked up to see a red orb of energy coalescing in front of him. Destruction was right in his face, and it couldn't wait to give him a kiss. Hakai no Hoshi, Star of Destruction. Once the name was uttered, an explosion let off. Surzex felt his leg become free and took the chance to retreat away from the blast. And a blast it was. The Devil of Destruction watched as his supposed opponent was enwrapped within a dark ball of destructive energy that looked to be vaporizing the ground around it. Then the ball exploded. The force of the explosion shook the mountain range and the surrounding forest area. For any normal fighter or even experienced combatants, taking the abrupt power of that attack spelled certain defeat, and even death in many cases, but the heir of the Gremlin knew better. He knew his opponent wasn't defeated by that attack, hurt hopefully, but defeated? Not a chance. From the ensuing aftermath, Surzex could see his opponent with his arms crossed covering his face, and the wind fluttering the man's magnificent hair around behind. It was always confusing to Surzex to see warrior with such long hair. You would think the hair would get in their way, but oddly enough it never did. While Surzex was in his own thoughts about long hair, and him having long hair, Naruto was reflecting on the information he just compiled. Horobai no Chikara is said to reduce anything it touches into nothingness, but it seems there is a limit to the ability. The user can eradicate anything they wish based upon the amount of energy placed in the attack, but it also dependent upon the difference in power between the user and their opponent. But I wonder what that attack would have felt like if he was actually aiming kill me. With his thoughts silencing themselves, the legacy of 2 legendary creatures prepared himself. It was time to begin using some more of his arsenal. Let us continue then, spoke Naruto, staring at Surzex. Without waiting another moment, he inhaled sharply, feeling the air feed into his creation. Gokumes Shitsu, Majestic Flame Destruction. Once the name reached the air, flames rushed forth in vengeance of their harmed emperor. A sea of vermilion, gold, black and azure fire saturated the area in a beautiful glow and intense heat. The rocks that were unfortunate enough to be licked by these flames burned to nothing more than molten specks. To the red-haired demon, he had been on the receiving end of a few fire attacks in his life, through spars with some members of the Phoenix House who were known for their pyrokinetic abilities. When he was younger and much more reckless, he would go and pick a few fights with some of the dragons that lived in these very mountains to see for himself if the legends about their power was actually true. To this day he still had phantom pains from some of those battles. But what was coming towards him at this moment was something he never experienced before. The intensity of the flames was skin-charring. He could feel it. His skin, lips, throat, and hair all began to dry up just from the residual heat exuded from the attack. The light emitting from the sea of fire was gorgeous to the air. It was beautiful enough that he caught himself actually admiring the attack as it was roaring towards him, waiting to consume and devour his existence, and reduce him to nothing but a memory. Deciding it would be better for his health to avoid the beautiful fire, Surzex called on the wings gifted to him as a devil and took to the sky. Even from above, the flames were so beautiful to witness, they were truly majestic. But something wasn't right. Looking to where the source of the flames was, Surzex came to the realization that he just committed a fundamental mistake in combat. Where is Dash? As soon as those words passed through his conscious mind, he felt pain in his spine. Speeding down to the ground and hearing the rush and bustle of the fire below, vaguely he could hear a word being spoke, and it was one that spelled bad news for him. Atsugai, pressure damage. Within a moment the redhead was bombarded with a large ball of compressed air that forced him into the roaring fire below. Looking on above with his wings majestically unfurled, Naruto narrowed his eyes, and following the command of its master, the pressurized wind ball exploded. Violent winds fed into the surrounding flames, creating a vicious firestorm to form, Surzex being caught right in the middle of the storm. Naruto watched the ensuing storm and became lost a bit in his own thoughts. For a mountain range named Dragon Mountain, I have yet to see any dragons at all. You would think the amount of energy we both have been releasing would at least spark a little interest, and some dragons would come to witness this fight. Perhaps they needed to release some more energy and increase the level of the fight. Boom! The raging firestorm was obliterated within a few minutes of its creation. Standing in a crater with wisps of fire and destructive energy seen all around the rim of the crater and even inside it. The ace of the anti-Satan faction was standing with scorch marks and rips all on his noble clothing with smoke wafting off of his damaged body. That was a good combo, spoke Surzex in his natural calm voice, speaking as if he wasn't just engulfed in a firestorm. Naruto didn't say anything for a moment, just staring down at the smoking devil. The power of destruction is quite the formidable and beautiful power to watch in action. Surzex smiled. Thank you. I thought the same thing when I saw your last fire attack, such intensity and heat. Tell me, Naruto-san, what exactly are you? Why do you ask now? Your energy signature gives off specific traits, as do all of species' energy signatures. The traits I sense from you are akin to those of a dragon's, but there is a mix in there. Something extra, something more, and I want to know what that is. Finished Surzex while staring up at his floating opponent. Hearing the train of thought and curiosity in the devil's voice, Naruto decided to respond. Make this fight more interesting and I'll consider telling you what you wish to know. Surzex chuckled at those words. More interesting? I believe I can make that happen. It has been a while since I've been able to cut loose. After those words left the mouth of Surzex, the mountains began to tremble. Naruto noticed the change in the wind as he could sense what was happening with Surzex. Lowering himself down to the ground and retracting his wings, the hybrid looked at the devil and saw his previously blue-green colored eyes were now a vicious red with the power of destruction running through his body freely. Naruto knew now that his opponent was beginning to take this battle seriously. He could feel the energy running rampant in and around the redhead. It was exciting him to see how his opponent could become when he actually became serious, and to think there were possibly other fighters that were on the same level. Within the mountains, more and more dragons began to awaken from the newly felt increase in power. It was pleasing to them to be saturated in such blood-racing power. Crawling out of their own personal caves within the mountain, they all looked and sniffed the air. Some even stuck their tongues out to gather a taste of the power they were feeling. Hurrah! Looking above, all the dragons saw a gigantic western dragon. A majority of the dragon's body is covered in dark purple, draconic scales with the exception of its lower body, specifically the belly. The inner portions of its long tail and legs are beige in color. With a triangular head with yellow horns, a pair of large, keen red eyes with lavender sclera, and serrated yet sharp canine teeth. The dragon also has claws with long, sharp, yellow nails on his hands, and large bat-like wings with rigid tips. Additionally, on the shoulders the dragon wears black armored pauldrons that extend down to his arms and a loincloth decorated with metallic accessories. This was one of the previous Dragon Kings, a legendary dragon known across the world as the Blaze Meteor Dragon Tannen. All the dragons witnessed their leader fly through the mountain range en route to the new power source that was just felt. Seeing their leader fly off to take care of it, all the dragons returned to their caves to sleep some more. No point in sticking their nose in business that had nothing to do with them. That's why they had Tannen to do it. Naruto stared into the red eyes of his opponent, and he saw in those eyes the end of his own existence. Destroyed and left beaten in a crater, body disintegrated, spirit and memory left forgotten as a mere casualty. A foolish upstart opponent believing he could challenge the heir of the Gremory household. Those eyes showed him that image. The lust for murder that permeated from the redhead's body created the vivid and blood-chilling images of his own demise. Surzex was truly holding up his end and making this fight definitely more interesting from the feeling he got by just standing in the presence of this power. Looking up, Naruto could see that even the sky was affected by the increase in power. The clouds began to formulate and pulse with an eerie red. Destruction was about to be let loose within the mountain of dragons, and no one was safe from its red kiss. Creation and destruction, two sides of the same coin in the eyes of some. They rely upon each other. As something is destroyed, the gift to create something new is born, and with creation the opportunity to destroy is presented. Destruction is a staple in the foundation of devil society. Many scholars say that destruction is ingrained in the DNA of devils. Ajuka Astaroth was always different from the norm of devil society. Many devils desired to flaunt their power, their capacity to destroy and manipulate. They saw it as their pride and joy. They became arrogant in the concept of destruction and believed it to be the core foundation of who they were and what they believed. Ajuka never followed those ideals. He always saw them as foolish and needless. Not destruction itself. No, destruction was needed in the world. It allowed for progression. It allowed for expansion. It allowed for creation. That was what intrigued Ajuka. The concept of creation, to be able to create something from seemingly nothing at all. Growing up, Ajuka was seen as an oddity in the eyes of his house and the eyes of other families. He preferred to be in his room and work on formulas and calculations. He would spend hours building and inventing anything his mind could imagine. Should he not be able to create what his mind envisioned, then he would try to find the correct formula that gave him the avenue to create it. Creation was his passion, it was his power, It was his hobby, and he cared not for anyone's belief about it. Lord Astaroth, the chess set you requested is here, spoke one of the lovely maids of the Astaroth clan from outside of the office door of the heir. After the announcement, the door opened and a blush instantly formed on the young maid's face, for standing in front of her was a gorgeous man. The man was about 6 feet tall. The man looked to be about 19 years old, with peach-colored skin that was unblemished, and looked to be well taken care of. The hair of the gorgeous young man was green in color, and naturally slicked back and shining with health and unrivaled beauty. The eyes of the man were a breathtaking blue that stopped the young maid in her very tracks and ceased all conscious efforts to communicate. The look in the young man's eyes was one of calculations and intensity afforded to those who have spent decades trying to understand the secrets of the world around them. Those eyes, oh how she longed to be held by this gorgeous powerful man and to become lost in the eyes. Upon the powerful and fit body of the man were robes and garments fit for a lord or a duke. The image of the man left the impression of a great and mysterious prince. Standing in front of the flustered maid was none other than the second ace of the anti-Satan faction, Ajuka Astaroth. Looking at the blushing maid, Ajuka always found it amusing to see the reactions the maids of his house always had whenever they came to see him. They always acted as if it was the first time that they ever saw him, and were too embarrassed to say anything to him, such adorable maids. "Ah, thank you my dear, I have been waiting a couple of days for this set," responded Ajuka with a small gracious smile as he reached out to take the set from the maid. Startled from her staring, the maid gave a radiant smile and responded, "No need to thank me my lord, I am here to serve you in any way you ask of me." Ajuka grabbed the set from the maid's hands and prepared to turn into his room, to continue his work. "My lord, could I ask you a question?" "You already did," answered Ajuka with a bit of mirth, as he looked to the maid, who giggled a little at his joke. "Ask what it is you wish, my dear." Smiling at his response, the maid gained an inquisitive look in her eyes and spoke, "My lord, what is it that you are planning to do with this game set? Everyone in the underworld knows of your fascination with inventing and creating, and I've been curious to understand what it is you plan to do with that chess set." Ajuka's hobby was no secret to anyone within the underworld. Even in the Astaroth clan over the years, everyone started to become more and more amazed by the ingenuity of Ajuka and all of his inventions and ideas. The second ace gained a whimsical, mysterious smile as he looked at the chess set for a moment. She could see it, the intelligence, the ideas, the ingenuity. She could see it all pass through the heir's eyes as he looked upon the set, as if it was his greatest achievement yet to be brought into this world. Whatever it was that the young master had in mind, it would be something that shook the underworld and possibly all other worlds to their very foundations. "Just some minor ideas I have swimming about in my head, do not think on it too much, in time it will be revealed to the world," finished Ajuka with a mysterious smile as he receded into his room and closed the door. The young maid turned around, aiming to return to her work. Satan's, being in the presence of that man always intrigued her body and her mind to their peak levels. It was sinful for a man to be so stimulating without even making an iota of physical contact. Ajuka placed the set down on his work desk as he opened the box up and pulled out the king piece and stared at it as if it contained all the secrets. This idea, it was groundbreaking in theory and was quite simple to put into application. He had done the calculations, he mapped out the pros and cons of the idea, gone over the political, social, psychological, and even the philosophical impact this idea would have on the world. It was the key to saving their species, no matter how the purists thought or believed. This was the best and most efficient way. Now I must find a way to gain a meeting with Lord Agars. It wasn't easy to gain a meeting with the Archduke of the Underworld, especially being of merely a duke household. But with the idea Ajuka had in mind, he was confident that he would be able to gain such a meeting and gain the materials needed. Pausing in his ponderings, the green-haired super devil looked out the window of his room. Something isn't right. Just as the thought passed through Ajuka's mind, he noticed the sky was pulsating red in vengeance in one specific area. The Dragon Mountains within the Gremry territory. Surzex must be fighting Tannen this time. The heir of Astaroth knew of his best friend's hobby of fighting dragons. Surzex was always a little battle-hungry. He could always feel the energy released by the dragons and by Surzex. Some battles were so intense that the released energy painted the picture of how the fight went, the moves used, the strategies implemented, the victor and the defeated. But this time it felt as if Surzek's energy was being blocked by a barrier of some kind, and in these times, that was anxiety-inducing to the ace. I should go and see who has pushed Surzex to such lengths. The power of time had no effect on devils. Its aggressive embrace did nothing to dampen the image of devils, unlike with humans. When time placed its finger upon a human, it was evident upon their bodies time was a vicious reminder of vain humility to humanity. In terms of devils, time wasn't so rough upon their bodies. Time embraced and caressed the devil form, allowing some more vain privileges to experience. None knew this truth more than the stunning Venelana Gremry. a devil of pure grace and jaw-dropping beauty. Standing at an impressive 5 feet 8 inches with short brown hair that reached to the middle of her back with loose bangs falling all over her forehead. The Duchess of the Gremmery had perfect alabaster skin that glowed with beauty and time-defying grace. Her eyes were a powerful violet that held kindness and the warmth of a mother who would do all she needed to protect her family. She was slim in size but gifted with curves befitting a devil woman, a generous bust and bountiful ass that her husband couldn't get enough of. On her lithe body was a pure white dress with stitching on the bottom perimeter that was pure black. On her toned and shapely legs were gray-colored stockings with gray-colored heels to match. At the current moment, the Duchess of the Gremmery was annoyed. She sent one of her personal maids to go and fetch her only son. 2 hours have passed, and she hasn't received any word from her maid on the whereabouts of her son. Now if there's one consistent rule among the Gremmery household, it is to never keep Venelana waiting no matter the circumstance. Hell hath no fury like Venelana when her patience has been tested and exhausted. All within the manor knew this rule. That's why when she walked throughout the manor with a gentle smile upon her gorgeous face, everyone hid and cowered. They could sense the danger and viciousness secreting from her form. This wasn't the whimsical Duchess of the Gremmery. The brunette Madam of Extinction was walking the halls of the manor. She figured if her maids could not find the boy for her, then the man that shares the same personality as her prey must have some idea as to where her quarry could be. Arriving to the office of her beloved, she opened the door without even the thought of knocking nor asking permission to enter. This was her manner. She did not need permission to enter into a room that is as much hers as her husband's. Who was going to question her right to move about this manor as she saw fit? She was destruction's queen. The Duchess of Extinction. None would dare challenge her, especially in her own home. Entering into the room, she came upon the handsome smiling face of her beloved Zeoticus. The man looked to be the spitting image of her son, only with longer hair and a short bit of red stubble upon his chin. This gorgeous man and that smile captured her heart the first time she met him all those centuries ago and gifted her with a beautiful son and hopefully another child in the future. But enough with the reminiscing at the moment. She has some business that must be addressed. "Hello, dear," spoke Venelana upon entering the office and taking a seat in front of her husband's desk. Smiling upon seeing his wife, Zeoticus spoke, "Hello, my love, you look absolutely stunning today." It was the truth in his eyes. She was breathtaking every time he saw her, and he could never get enough of looking into those beautiful violet orbs. Smiling at the compliment, the man always knew how to butter her up and put a smile on her face. "Oh, stop, you said that when I woke you up this morning." Standing up and walking to the front of his desk, he sat on the desk and held his beloved wife's hands and spoke, and it was as much the truth then as it is now. "Getting to wake up to you every day is a gift I will never get tired of, my love." Damn it, the bastard had her blushing now. He always spoke with such passion when it was just the two of them. Those intense seafoam orbs always made her legs weak. The man dripped with passion and intensity, and it always made him irresistible in her eyes. Bashfully she spoke, "Zeoticus." Bringing his wife's hands up to his mouth, he laid chaste kisses that trailed up her arms. Pulling her out of the chair and into his arms to embrace her, he continued to trail up to her neck. He could never get enough of this woman. Just her presence alone sent his heart soaring and ignited the sins of his existence. Venelana Gremmery, he loved that he was able to give this woman his name, this manor, all of his love, and right now he was planning to show her how much this woman drove him crazy. Moaning in pleasure from feeling her husband's lips on her neck and his strong hands roaming all over her body. She could feel his fingers gliding over her womanhood, and her body was responding in bliss to the feeling. Satan's, this man drove her insane. "Zeoticus, my love, I came." "Already? That's a new record." Pulling back with a mock glare and a blush on her face, she saw the whimsy in her husband's eyes and in his smirk. "The idiot thought he was funny, you wish, but I came here originally to ask you if you knew where your son was." Not really focused on the question, Zeoticus spoke, and if he really thought about his answer he would realize how foolish it was. "He's in the mountains," said he wanted to get some alone time and some training done. "Wait, what?" Now the Duchess knew many things about her son, his caring personality which she adored, his sharp wit and smooth tongue, that he inherited from his father, that amused her every time it came around, and his drive to become stronger to protect his family. That last bit of knowledge was what currently stopped Venelana in her tracks. Now those mountains were areas that she explicitly told Serzex when he was younger he was prohibited from going to. And to her eternal irritation, her buffoon of a husband believed it intelligent to ignore her words and take her son up there and to go training with the resident dragons of those mountains. Oh, the verbal tirade she unleashed on the foolish males in her life was an event that was still spoken of within the confines of the manor. But as her beloved son grew older and undoubtedly more powerful, she became less restrictive of his visits within the mountains. It was not that she believed her son wasn't powerful enough to take care of himself, not at all. She knew the power her son held. She could feel it when he was born. Her son was destined to be the avatar of destruction. She had no doubt he could protect himself. She just hated the condition that he always returned home and bleeding from head to toe and usually unconscious. For a mother, to constantly see your child place themselves in such dangerous situations over and over again, it was painful to watch. You mean he has gone to face those vicious dragons again? Spoke the brunette Madam of Extinction in an eerie calm tone. Xiaotica sighed. Once he told her where the boy was, he knew he made a mistake, and would now suffer the repercussions from his folly. My love, Surzex is one of the strongest devils in the world. The boy has power that could drown the entirety of the underworld and all the inhabitants in an ocean of destruction. He is capable enough to go into the mountains and to fight some of the dragons that are there. None of them hold the power to truly hurt him anymore. The only one that could provide him some substantial injury is Tannen. Even he knows that in a fight with Surzex he wouldn't leave that fight in full health. Finished the Duke with a sigh while holding on to his beloved Duchess. She understood his words, they even made perfect sense to her. I know, my love, it's just I hate his penchant habit of getting into such dangerous situations, and seeing the results of him needing medical assistance. No mother wants to see their child covered in blood and unconscious just to see him wake up and repeat the action all over again. Venelana, your worry for our child is one of the greatest quality you possess, but you must understand our son is a being of immense power. You as well as I know that power attracts powerful beings in dangerous situations. Power loves to be challenged, and it will call out to wherever and whoever it can to gain that challenge. You know this rule as much as I do. Xiaoticus finished. His wife was a woman of monstrous power. She knew the effects of power and the psychological implications of holding great power. Power, when tamed, was obedient to its master, but it will still call out to its master for a reprieve, a release, to be set free and to challenge everyone around. Those that hold great power also become restless when they can't let their power free. So what was so wrong with allowing his son to go out and to test his power against the greatest physical representations of power this world ever knew? Xiaoticus, why is there a barrier surrounding the forest and mountains? What? Hearing the jarring question, the Duke searched out for the usually blaring energy of his only child, and he felt it, but it was subdued as if it was behind a barrier. That shouldn't be the case at all. Usually when he goes to the mountains to train, everyone in the compound and possibly beyond can feel his power. Who was the fool to lock themselves in a barrier with the devil that made destruction bow to his whims? Standing up and looking his wife in the eyes, Xiaoticus spoke, Do you desire me to come with you? He knew that his wife could handle most enemies in this world. Her power and battle prowess were two more reasons that he had fallen for the woman. He knew that she was going to see what was going on with her son and the situation that he had found himself in. At this point he was merely asking if she wanted backup. The Duke looked into his Duchess' eyes, and in the gorgeous violet eyes he saw a glint of red appear, the light of destruction. No, I will be fine going alone. With nothing more spoken, a gremry magic circle appeared beneath Venelana's feet, and she disappeared, leaving Xiaoticus in his office by himself. Damn, that woman is sexy when she gets serious. Tannen could taste it in the air. The atmosphere was filled with lust, and it was a feeling he was familiar with. Surzex was a monstrous opponent to go against, especially when he got serious and started to move with the intent to take a life. It had been years since he and Destruction's favorite devil last did battle, but the devil was formidable even then. But the feeling he was getting now, this was something he never thought the young redhead would have become. It was amazing. But he is facing against an interesting being. I wonder how this newcomer will respond to the power he has brought upon himself. Naruto was surprised by the stark difference in the air surrounding his opponent. Before, the aura around his opponent was light, but it did hold some force. It was the aura of a light-hearted man, a man who didn't take many things to heart, and knew how to laugh off many things. But the man that stood before his eyes now was a different man. The air around him was suffocating as if it were a python, and Naruto was the newest prey caught in the serpent's constriction. Naruto could see it in Surzek's eyes. The devil wanted his blood to be spilled upon these mountains. He desired to paint the mountains crimson. The devil disappeared. What th dash? Before the thought could finish, Surzex was in front of Naruto, delivering a debilitating punch to the stomach of the hybrid. Gah! Bits of spit and blood left Naruto's mouth as Surzex retracted his fist and continued his brutal assault. A left-right combo to the chin followed by an uppercut that snapped Naruto's jaw shut. Destruction's favorite devil spun and delivered a vicious kick to the right side of Naruto's neck that sent the blonde flying. Disappearing for a moment, the redhead appeared above his prey and delivered a double axe-handle slam that forced Naruto to be embedded into the ground. Falling towards his prey, Surzex propelled his feet down with the intent of crushing the ribs of the man that challenged him, the opponent that wanted to dance with him. Seeing the impending dropkick, Naruto evaded out of the crater and landed a few feet away from the crater. Surzex halted his descent with the help of his wings and a little magic. He floated for a moment, staring at Naruto's crouched form. The blonde was pointing at him for some reason. Zero, hollow flash. A concentrated beam of orange energy shot towards the devil's floating form with a ravenous speed aimed at his heart. Surzex erected a magical shield to deflect the energy beam. Quickly he spun around, coming face to face with the surprised Naruto. Raising his hand, Surzex released his own concentrated beam of destructive energy that blasted Naruto away and rolling on the ground. Surzex slightly touched back on the ground and waited. He was quite patient in his approach to combat. It was good to allow his energy a chance to calm itself and slowly become accustomed to the battle after being raised to such a level so rapidly. Sensing an increase in energy, the redhead looked to the dust cloud that was formed from the movement of his opponent's unwillingly departure. Suddenly from the cloud a stream of lighting struck out. Straining his red eyes, Surzex was surprised to see what looked to be a wolf, made of lighting with its own blistering red eyes. The maw of the elemental beast similar in color to its eye, and the beast moved with a vengeance towards him. Raising his hand, Surzex launched a ball of destruction towards the beast, to dispel and offset the conjuring of this creature. Suddenly the beast dodged the ball and lunged at the air, surprising him with the swift and sudden movements. Moving to evade the beast, the ace watched how the monster of lighting moved as if it were sentient. Enough of this beast. Surzex charged forward towards the beast and waited until the lighting entity opened its mouth to electrify him. Commanding destruction, Surzex allowed the beast to bite his arm, but he received no damage as his arm was covered in volatile energy that didn't like to be bitten. In a shower of sparks, the electric wolf was destroyed. With vengeful speed, Naruto shot at his opponent with blue lighting crackling around his claw-like right hand. Raijutsuga, lightning beast tracking Fang. From Naruto's hand, another wolf of lighting was brought to life, ready to strike the enemy of its master. So the beast is connected to him, and he controls it from his hand. With that information, Surzex charged towards his incoming opponent, calling upon his masterful expertise in magic, and used the wind to create a screen of dust blinding Naruto. Moving quickly, Surzex struck Naruto quickly 3 times and sent him flying away while managing to sever the connection he had to his beast. Using some more wind, Surzex blasted his created screen away and watched his opponent stand back up and seeing the cuts and blood dripping from his mouth. Calmly, Surzex spoke, "I know this isn't all that you can do. How much longer must I beat you before you become serious?" Hearing none of it, Naruto struck once more with a flurry of fists, aiming to break the bones of his opponent. Moving about the punches, Surzex only struck in well-timed counters to blows thrown at him. Parrying a fist, he laid an elbow into Naruto's sternum. Stunned was the hybrid and soon forced to drop to one knee after having one leg kicked out from under him. With vicious strikes, Surzex struck Naruto violently. Every strike delivered to the hybrid's chest or face were executed with murderous intent. Surzex felt the blood of his opponent splash on his knuckles as he dealt a deliberate fist to the jaw of the hybrid. To anyone who was watching the fight from this point would say that this was a brutal beating created from vengeance. Having enough of his bleeding opponent, Surzex charged energy through his right leg and kicked Naruto in his chest, sending him crashing away, creating a long trail of debris, leaving a crater in the side of a giant rock. Surzex waited calmly. His energy was singing throughout his body. It was begging him to destroy the man that challenged him. It whispered of annihilating this fool who dared to challenge him and to give such a poor performance. He almost listened to his power. The temptation to give in and allow his energy to take control, erase his opponent from this battle. But he knew there was more to his opponent. His mind told him to wait and see what his opponent had up his sleeve. The son of Venelana and Zeoticus waited patiently and looked at his downed opponent. He could see blood drip from his mouth and head. Blood was seen all on the man's clothing and even inside his clothes, staining them. The ace watched as his opponent slowly stood up and stood in a strong stance and spit out some blood. His instincts were right. His opponent has some fight left. "Do you wish to continue, Naruto?" Hearing the question, Naruto wiped the blood from his face and took a deep breath. Surzex had made this fight much more interesting, and he was even striking with killer intent. Each blow bathed in murderous lust. It showed Naruto that the man he was facing was nothing short of a monster. But Naruto can hold his own against monsters. Appearing within the forest, Venelana Gremory looked towards the mountains with a look of anger and determination. Whoever it is that erected this barrier, they didn't care about anyone entering, which was very confusing to the Duchess. Why erect a barrier and make it simple for anyone and everyone able to enter? Lady Venelana? Turning quickly, the brunette beauty came upon the form of her son's best friend, a young man that she raised as if he were her second son. Ajuka Astaroth. Surprised by his appearance, Venelana looked at him in confusion and spoke. "Ajuka, what are you doing here?" Ajuka looked at the barrier in front of him and responded, "I was in my study tinkering with some ideas I've had in my head, and I noticed the sky pulsing with power over the mountains in your region. As you and I know, your son has a penchant for challenging dragons, so I assumed he was fighting Tannen this time around, but the usual release of energy that usually accompanies those battles was being blocked by this barrier. Needless to say, I came to investigate. Finished Ajuka, looking back at Venelana. Hearing the explanation, Venelana nodded her head and her eyes lit up in crimson determination, and she spoke, "Shall we see who has decided to attack my son and my lands?" Ajuka had heard stories from various members of his house, members of other houses, and from both Theodicus and Surzex about the anger of Venelana Gremory. The usual whimsical, enchanting Duchess of Gremory was capable of becoming something terrifying when she became angered. Hearing the stories of such moments paled in comparison to standing beside such anger, and now Ajuka could find it possible how someone like Surzex could become as powerful as he is while also being as humble as he is. "Yes, let us go," spoke Ajuka with power in his voice. As both Venelana and Ajuka crossed the barrier, they were overcome with a familiar energy signature that they both knew very well. Destruction was permeating through the air with immense fury. They both could see it in the sky. Hell was unleashed by Surzex, and this barrier was the only thing preventing the underworld from feeling it. Ajuka felt the energy in the atmosphere. It told him the story of the battle and how it was progressing. Surzex was overpowering his opponent and dismantling him. The unknown energy source was diminutive in stature compared to Surzex. It was confusing, honestly. Why would you raise your power so high for an opponent of such a level, Surzex? Venelana looked to the mountains and saw a purple dragon flying in the direction where the energy signatures were originating from. Tannen must have sensed the disturbance as well, spoke the Duchess to herself. After a moment of watching Tannen, Ajuka spoke, "Lady Venelana, we should hurry to wherever Surzex is. Something doesn't feel right." Just as the words exited the air's mouth, humongous waves of power began to flow all across the mountain range and forest. The one emotion felt throughout the atmosphere was terrifying. Fury was felt in waves, monstrous anger permeated inside the barrier. Ajuka and Venelana looked at each other, and came to a very serious and startling conclusion. This new level of power wasn't coming from Surzex at all. Surzex felt the energy in his opponent. It was raging in anger at the display that its master had put on so far. The power of the dragon was furious at being bested so far by the power of destruction, and the air knew a furious dragon was an even more dangerous one. From now on, he knew that this fight was going to get a lot more painful for him and his opponent. Naruto's scarab began to fade into jet black while his eyes began to shine like the gems that they were. Pulses of energy were being released from his body as the gift of the phoenix began to heal the wounds scattered throughout his body. His once fatigued but powerful stance began to change. He looked to be gaining energy. Just as it did with Surzeka's display, the mountains began to shake in response to the increase in energy. The devil's crimson eyes could see it. He could feel the power his opponent still had left inside of him. He felt the energy all throughout the atmosphere. He could see it mending the wounds of its master. The energy was wrapping around Naruto almost in a suit of armor. Surzex watched as Naruto's breathing evened out, and he became more and more comfortable with the new level of power he was emitting. Surzex wanted to stop the increase. He wanted to stop his opponent from regaining his stamina and health, but his warrior side that was slowly starting to take over stopped him. When was the next time he would be able to relish in this feeling? The feeling of his power being unleashed and standing across from a foe that could match him. Surzex didn't know the answer, but he did know right now he was going to live in the moment as long as he can and enjoy this fight. Both warriors looked each other in the eyes, sinister scarlet and blazing vermilion, azure, gold and black. Both fighters waited for the other. Time slowed for each fighter, and their minds slowly began to see their opponent as true enemies. The energy each fighter was releasing called for them to fight one another as true opponents, so now each fighter wouldn't be able to hold back. With a violent shockwave, both fighters appeared before one another and clashed in a flurry of fists, aiming to break the body of their opponents. All throughout the mountains and the forest, shockwaves and tremors could be heard as their blows struck against each other. Blows that could destroy the very land they stood on were being flung at each other in an attempt to rip the other asunder. This was the battle they wanted. Rather viciously, Naruto struck Surzex in the jaw with an elbow that sent the redhead stumbling back, but quickly the redhead regained his bearings and responded with a two-hit combo on his adversary. Aiming to deliver another strike to Naruto, Surzex went for a kick aimed at his opponent temple, trying to shatter the skull of his foe. Ducking under the kick, Naruto sends forth a jab with his clawed hand and sliced the thigh of his opponent. Quickly standing straight again, Naruto kicked Surzex in his side, sending the devil away from him, but that suited his needs. Surzex called upon his destructive energy to surround him. Small baseball-sized orbs of destruction formed a protective perimeter around him. Ruin the extinct, the culmination of Surzek's training and perfecting his bloodline. These orbs are capable of eradicating anything and everything their master desired, able to bypass any defense the enemy can erect. Throughout the fight, he allowed his opponent to see this power in toned-down dosages, but now, he couldn't do that. No, now he would show his opponent the full extent of destruction. Sending the orbs at his opponent in blinding speed, Surzex wanted to see destruction. He wanted his opponent to be annihilated and never to rise again. Naruto saw the orbs coming and could feel the concentrated power held inside those orbs. Blocking them became much more dangerous of an option. Moving swiftly, Naruto swiped his left hand in the path of the orbs, sending a massive wave of wind at the incoming projectiles. As expected, the orbs devoured the wind within moments, creating more and more wind walls. Dust started to accumulate all around the area, blocking the crimson orbs from their master's view. He destroyed them. Surzex felt the connection with his orbs dissipate, meaning that the orbs were destroyed in the dust storm. That was annoying, but it made sense. The power of destruction was an incredible ability many believed to be unbeatable, but that was far from the truth. The way an opponent can counteract against the Devil King's power is based upon the power and skill of the user. If a user of the power isn't as skilled or powerful, their ability to destroy will be reflected. Surzex was quite possibly the greatest wielder of destruction in history, but going against someone with power that rivals his own presented his opponent the opportunity to withstand and counter the king's power. Surzex saw Naruto burst from the dust and felt his opponent's will to kill him in full effect, and it made his hair stand on the back of his neck. In the hands of the blonde was a blazing broadsword that looked to be made of flames that could eradicate the very soul of its victims. His opponent learned how to counter his greatest and most trusted weapon, and that was very exciting for the Crimson Devil, seeing as how only one other person has figured out how to counter his power. Surzex raised his right hand towards his opponent and started collecting energy towards the center of his palm. Ono Shometsu, Annihilation of the King. A beam of vibrant red destruction blasted towards the approaching hybrid, aiming to eradicate his existence from this battlefield. Halting in the middle of his dash and raising his left hand, Naruto formed a ball of black and orange concentrated energy. Zero Oscura's Black Hollow Flash. With a calm voice, Naruto announced his attack. Zero Oscura is a much more powerful form of Naruto's regular Zero that he usually saves for when he is truly serious in battle. This battle was the perfect occasion to bring out the attack. Both concentrated beams clashed with one another and struggled for a moment, trying to overcome one another. Surzex was annoyed and a bit surprised by the fact that his attack hasn't eaten through Naruto's hollow flash yet, and was even being pushed back. Both opponents began to increase the power in their attacks, trying to overpower one another. Honestly, it was a futile endeavor. Soon enough, both attacks eventually exploded, creating an enormous windstorm and debris cloud that was powerful enough to force Surzex to cover his eyes. Quickly the wind toned down and Surzex uncovered his eyes and looked to where his opponent was and saw something that he really didn't want to see. Surrounding Naruto was what looked to be a serpent of wind, coiled around him as if it were protecting him. The elemental beast looked reminiscent of a king cobra in appearance, but was definitely much larger and more vicious. Surzex saw the serpent rise and continue to rise. It was as if it was constantly getting bigger. No, it is getting bigger. He could see the wind from the explosion feed into the monster as it continued to grow and glare down at him as if he has just invaded the domain of this serpent. After another couple seconds, the beast stopped growing and gave a ghastly hiss that sounded more like a roar than anything else. Without even uttering another sound, the serpent launched itself at Surzex with the intent on destroying its prey. Thinking quickly, the air sent orbs of destruction towards the beast in an effort to destroy the technique implemented against him. The serpent ducked and maneuvered around each orb and avoided them with ease. The only thing on the wind serpent's programmed mind was to kill Surzex. Jumping away from a lunge, Surzex watched as the beast impressively struck again without any wasted movement from its initial miss. Landing on top of one of the destroyed mountains, Surzex watched calmly as the beast raced towards him. The redhead made a come here motion with his index finger as the beast was a couple feet away from him. Just as the serpent made to bite with its wind fangs, it suddenly exploded due to being struck by the orbs of destruction that detonated upon initial contact with the beast. Hurricane force winds were released in the ensuing explosion, slicing into the redhead, causing some of his demonic blood to fall upon his garments. Soon enough, Surzex saw a stream of fire heading towards him, and he remembered the first time his opponent combined those two complementary elements together. Thinking quickly, the Master of Destruction decided to display his skill in other magical fields and created a gigantic stream of water from his mouth to try and reduce the power of the flames coming towards him, while simultaneously erecting a barrier of destructive energy to protect him from the inevitability that would occur. Like predicted, the combination of phoenix and dragon flames was only held up for a moment before the flames obliterated the stream of water and struck the wind sphere. Soon another raging firestorm was upon the mountain range, this one much more intense than the previous one. It was the wrath of a dragon brought upon the world in full force, and the intensity, the flames looked to swallow its master's opponent. Naruto floated up and watched the storm patiently. He was waiting. A few guests were on their way here and Naruto didn't want his battle to be interrupted just yet, but he knew it was smarter to be patient. Soon enough the firestorm calmed down and the mountain that the red cocoon was standing on crumbled into charred and molten rock. Slowly the cocoon dispersed and revealed Surzex sweating a bit with his wings out staying in the air. He looked at his opponent for a moment and spoke, "You seem to have sensed something." Naruto looked at Surzex and nodded in response, "Hi, it seems we have few guests on their way here at the moment." Surzex looked to his left and saw the flying form of Tannen approach and landed a little bit away from the two floating combatants. Surzex smiled upon seeing his old training and sparring partner once again. It was always nice to see the former Dragon King. Naruto, on the other hand, looked at the dragon in interest. He knew the legend of this dragon, one of the former 5 kings that roamed the world, the warrior of the 5, the Blaze Meteor Dragon. "Tannen, it's good to see you again, my friend. Is there something you need at the current moment, because I am in the middle of something rather important?" spoke the heir in a friendly tone, as if he wasn't in the middle of a rather intense battle. "Likewise, it is good to see you again as well, Surzex, and I see that you are. I could feel the energy that was released between you two back in my den," spoke the purple dragon in a conversational tone. "Finally, a dragon has appeared after all of the energy that we both have released. I was beginning to wonder if this mountain range was named after dragons only because it would sound appealing," spoke Naruto as he turned his head towards the former king with respect and calmness showing in his powerful eyes. Tannen looked to the newest voice that spoke in response to his appearance, and was hit with a strange wave of nostalgia. The aura of power that he felt emanating off of this young one was familiar to him, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly from where. One thing he could pinpoint in the power of this stranger: the distinct feeling of a dragon. "Indeed, you both have released a decent amount of power, so I figured it was only right that I came to investigate. I knew Surzex was here. I know the feeling of his power. Anywhere you, on the other hand, are the mystery. Who are you, young dragon?" finished Tannen in a calm tone as he saw the proper respect afforded to him in the eyes of this young dragon before him. "My name is Naruto." "Naruto, doesn't that mean fish cake?" Annoyance flashed in the blonde's eyes as he heard snickering from Surzex across from him. "Yes, but my parents named me Naruto in the meaning of maelstrom, not fish cake." "I see, so why is it that you were waiting for dragons to appear around here? Not many creatures seek out dragons unless they are battle-hungry, or they're idiots," finished Tannen as he directed the last part of his statement to the redhead that was oblivious to the insult thrown at him. "Forgive me, but such questions can be answered at a later time, Tannen Dano. At the moment I am in the middle of a rather fun fight that I would like to conclude without our remaining guests interrupting. So, I will ask you, seeing as how you haven't made a move to stop us yet, will you make sure that our other 2 guests don't interfere until the end of our battle?" finished Naruto while turning his vision and focus back to his original opponent. Tannen looked to Surzex and could see it in the vibrant red eyes and vicious smile. The heir didn't want their battle to be interrupted anymore. So, with acceptance, Tannen made himself comfortable and decided to merely watch. That was honestly the only reason he came here anyway. He just wanted to watch a good fight. Surzex looked back at his opponent, and his focus returned to what it was before. Both he and Naruto could feel it now. This would be the final stretch in this fight. Without another moment, both fighters disappeared, and shockwaves and concussive punches were heard all throughout the battlefield. If one were a combatant in this fight, they would hear the sound of punches that could shatter bones upon impact. Both fighters were raining blows upon one another in a display of pure power. Each blow was stronger and sharper than the last one thrown. They were becoming stronger every time that they struck. They were becoming acclimated to the skill that their opponent was showing. Both fighters were growing the more their fists collided. Steel was sharpening steel. Tannen could feel the vibrations left from their blows through the air and through the ground. Both competitors' power and force were felt. Standing so close to the combat, the force of each blow reverberated off his scales, giving him a sense of power each opponent held. It was interesting. Tannen knew the power that Surzex had achieved. He was there to witness the progression of the devil and his rise to power. But for this newcomer to appear out of nowhere and possess such power and skill, it sparked his curiosity. Where did this man come from, and who was it that cultivated such power within him? It seems they arrived, thought the former king as he could sense the last 2 guests arrive as both competitors suddenly backed away from each other. Surzex summoned magic seals to surround his levitating opponent, and from each seal lightning struck with vengeance. Moving quickly, Naruto utilized aerial acrobatics to avoid each bolt that was sent towards him. The seals continued to reposition themselves around him as he looked for a way to reverse the situation he found himself in. The super devil manipulated the seals with his left hand as his right hand charged a large concentration of destruction in his hand, much more concentrated than any other he has used so far. Naruto sensed the rise in energy and looked at his opponent, preparing to stop him before the redhead could do whatever it is that he had in mind. This was where he made a crucial mistake. Just as he prepared to accelerate to his opponent, he was suddenly struck in the spine by a powerful bolt of lightning from a seal in his blind spot. More and more the seals began to strike him with lightning. Now being the master of lightning, the damage the element could have dealt was reduced, but receiving consecutive strikes were damaging in their own right. Paralyzed by multiple bolts and grunting in pain, Naruto gathered his mental bearings to look up just in time to see his opponent fired a dark red, almost black ball of destruction towards him. Setsumetsu no Suda, Star of Extinction. Speeding towards him, Naruto could do nothing as electricity stunned his body and a ball of destruction struck him square in the chest and detonated. Boom! A massive shockwave erupted from the explosion. The power from the blast launched some boulders away from the battle and even uprooted some trees from the ground. Streaks of residual lighting and destructive energy began lashing around, chaotically striking everything in and around the battlefield, no matter who or what it was. Tannen had to shield himself from an errant streak of lighting that struck the ground in front of him, raising a giant cloud of smoke and debris. The newly arrived Venelana created a barrier around herself and Ajuka, deflecting away errant streams of lightning and destruction. Soon enough the display ended and the dust from the initial explosion dissipated to reveal a heavily damaged and panting Naruto. His kimono was burned away, leaving his upper body bare for all to see. His body was inhabited by bruises, burn marks and slices, dripping blood, showing testament to the level of abuse he and Surzex inflicted on one another. You used a good amount of energy to counteract the effects of the lightning and protect yourself from that orb of destruction, spoke the redhead as he stared at his panting opponent. Taking a moment, Naruto spoke. Yeah, it was either protect myself or become a charred corpse. I think you can understand my decision, Surzex. Inhaling some much-needed air, Naruto righted himself and lowered himself to the ground while looking up at his opponent. Surzex followed suit and landed on the ground calmly and looked at his opponent once more. It was interesting to him. He could see the wounds that Naruto received were healing themselves, albeit at a slow rate, but healing nonetheless. It just raised more questions of the lineage of the man before him. What race did he belong to, and how is it that he stayed in secrecy for so long? But for now, it was time to finish this battle. No matter how much he healed, it wouldn't be enough. The Super Devil would make sure of that. Surzex, behind you. Looking to where he heard the shout, Surzex saw his mother with her hands cupped over her mouth, and confused by her appearance, and shout. Surzex heeded the words, and just as he prepared to turn around, he was locked in a full Nelson. What the dash? Looking behind, imagine his surprise on seeing a carbon copy of his opponent locking him into a full Nelson. He made a fucking clone in the midst of all the chaos from my last attack. Sneaky bastard. You used lighting against me, so it is only right that I return the favor. Once the statement was finished, electricity was emitted from the clone's body, electrocuting Surzex. Gah! Damn it! I have to help him, thought Venelana with anger and vengeance in her eyes, and with that same vengeance she made a move to enter into the battle. But before she could move even an inch, a long purple tail slammed in front of her, halting any movement that she planned. Looking to the dragon that dared to halt her from helping her son, Venelana's eyes shone with red ferocity. Move your tail out of my way before I erase it, and you along with it, spoke Venelana with motherly fury in her voice. Tannen looked at the woman for a moment, and registered the words she spoke to him. His pride felt insulted that she felt she was capable of accomplishing such a feat. Make no mistake, woman, I am no mere dragon that inhabits these mountains. I was one of the 5 great kings for a reason, and I can easily show you that reason, spoke Tannen in an aggressive tone as he looked down at the Duchess that had the nerve to threaten his existence. Venelana continued to stare at Tannen in the eye and finally spoke. Then why is it that you have stopped me from helping my son? For the reason that your son has asked me to not allow any more interruptions to his battle. Besides, this fight will end soon. Both fighters won't be able to continue this much longer without causing commotion all over the underworld. That's why Ajuka has yet to step in and help his best friend, finished Tannen as he returned his eyes back to the fight at hand. Venelana looked to Ajuka and saw that Tannen was correct in his observation as Ajuka looked at her for a moment and conveyed the confirmation with his eyes. Resigning herself to kill the intruder, her son, Ajuka, Tannen, and even her jackass of a husband, Venelana waited patiently with her eyes ablaze with destructive anger. Surzex was tired of being electrocuted, so in response he released a considerable amount of destructive energy in the direction of the clone. Needless to say, the clone was eradicated from existence, and the ace was no longer being encased in electricity. Panting slightly, the Super Devil looked up to the hand of his opponent raised only a few feet away from his face, and all it did was raise warning signs all throughout his body. Hiryu Gekizoku Shuten Reiho, Flying Dragon Striking Heaven Shaking Thunder Cannon. From the hybrid's hand a gigantic beam of blue electrical energy was fired at Surzex at point-blank range, enshrouding his form entirely. The beam continued on, ripping through mountains like a hot knife through butter. The energy released was the greatest amount released so far by either combatant. Hiryu Gekizoku Shinten Reiho, one of Naruto's strongest and personal favorite techniques that he has in his arsenal. He developed the concept for the technique after watching some of the past battles that Death was a part of during his days as a hunter. The technique was always glorious for Naruto to watch, but sadly he couldn't get the chance to admire the results from his beloved attack. An explosion of debris into the air showed itself to be Surzex looking worse for wear after experiencing the destructive power of that attack. His noble clothing was burnt in parts, exposing his skin. Smoke lightly wafted off his body, and he panted, showing the effects that the attack had on his body. "Don't you think it's a bit petty of you to use consecutive lighting attacks after I just used them, Naruto?" questioned Surzex with annoyance showing in his red eyes. Naruto shrugged his shoulders in response. "I'm a petty man, Surzex." Both fighters were on their last legs, and they both knew it. No matter the facade they tried to put on, if they continued this fight anymore, then the entire underworld would be destroyed in the aftermath. Neither combatant wanted to enter into that reservoir of power in this fight. There was no true need to step into that realm. Both Naruto and Surzex relayed the message with their eyes. "This is my final attack." Surzex lowered himself down to the ground and launched himself at Naruto at his fastest speed. Naruto didn't wait, as he immediately responded in kind to meet his foe. To the eyes of Tannen, Venelana and even Ajuka both simply disappeared from their fields of vision, which was terrifying in thought. All three of these individuals were beings of immense power and battle prowess. For these two fighters to be able to move at speeds that they can't track gave testament to the pedestal of skill and power both Naruto and Surzex stood on. "Where are they?" asked Venelana in confusion. "I don't know," spoke Ajuka in concentration as he strained his eyes and senses to detect where the two went. Tannen didn't say anything in response, he simply looked up. Suddenly the entire area became blinded in white light. The barrier surrounding the forest and mountains shattered, and all of the energy being held in the mountains was released upon the underworld, shaking the realm and all its inhabitants to their very core. Why did he come here again? What did he want to gain out of meeting with him again? Honestly, every time they came into the physical vicinity of one another it always got like this. The man honestly believed he could ascend the ranks of the four, and take his mount. Not even the Pale Stead would acknowledge him as worthy. The arrogance that secreted from this child never ceased to irritate the Pale Rider. Children never understand hierarchy unless they are directly and correctly educated. "You aren't too focused," shouted a voice behind Death as he casually spun around and blocked the blade that was aiming for the back of his neck. Why do people believe that swinging a sword and yelling is an efficient way to attack someone? In response to the attack, Death snapped off a powerful kick that sent his assailant far away from him. To anyone below the ranks of the four, then a kick of that power could do some serious damage. But among the horsemen, a kick of that power would be more akin to a love tap. Death watched as his assailant get up from the kick. Standing in front of Death was a man shorter than him at about 6 feet 2 inches, foot slim in body type, but under the slim form the man held power that was evident to the ancient being. The man had creamy white skin that held a healthy shine. On top of the man's head was short wavy red ginger-colored hair that reached to the base of his neck. The eyes of the man were a shining silver with a ring of crimson seen around the pupil and shooting all throughout the iris. The redhead wore a red noble-style high-collar golden-lined shirt with a white overcoat that has a golden line at the wrist that is lapsed with a golden belt, white pants and white shoes. In the hands of the nobleman was a thin traditional silver longsword. The hilt of the blade was made of gold and shaped as a cross. The handle of the blade was black in color, and on the pommel of the blade was a vibrant red gem that looked to have fire raging inside of it. This was none other than the commander of the Red Steed War. The man that Death had come to visit, and at the very moment Death was beginning to regret that decision. "How long has it been since we last saw each other, Death?" questioned War with a smile upon his handsome face while looking to the greatest of the four. For War, whenever he got the chance to stand across from Death, it always gave him a rush of pure excitement. Being among the four horsemen, War developed a love and an admiration for power and powerful entities. Power was absolute. It did not debate, nor did it plead. When power appeared in the room, everyone took notice of its presence and obeyed its commands. "Why have you been influencing the underworld again, War? It was annoying enough the first time," spoke Death while staring at War. Smiling at the response, War tightened his grip on his blade and appeared in front of Death with his longsword poised to stab the ancient rider. Death's eyes followed the movement the entire way. The boy might as well have been walking with that level of speed he exhibited. Seeing the attack, Death used his blade to parry the stab attempt to the right, and moved quickly inside of the guard of the Red Horseman. An elbow to the horseman's sternum followed by a powerful punch to the jaw of the redhead created the space Death desired. "You're still as strong as ever, my friend," spoke War, still with a smile on his face. "We aren't friends, War," spoke Death in an ice tone as he looked at the annoyance that was the Red Commander of the Apocalypse. Death saw War's smile stretch even wider after that response. "Oh, come now, We've known each other for the good part of 3 millenniums or so now. You should be much nicer to your friends. Finished War with a pleasant tone. Death said nothing to the response, and merely looked at War with piercing eyes. That's the same look you gave me the last time we met over 500 years ago, when I tried to ambush you. Spoke War with a calm smile on his face while speaking of attacking his conversational partner. Death's eyes became more frigid upon the reminder of that annoying day. War, you brought an entire nation of servants, both living and dead, and attacked me on the premise that you were bored. That was a day that still annoyed Death whenever he thought about it, or when his symbiotic partner felt the need to mention it. War felt a slight shiver go down his spine under the stoic tone and gaze of Death. War knew that the enigmatic writer was still annoyed with him for that stunt. Don't lie, you know it was fun having a nation brought to you just so they can be slaughtered by your blade, Death. We are warriors of great power. In our souls we cannot deny that we are killers and that we become bored when we don't have the opportunity to kill after a period of time. War paused for a moment to collect his thoughts as he saw the irritation grow in Death's eyes. War continued after his thoughts collected. I understand you didn't enjoy the cannon fodder that I brought to the party that day, but they were the best that I could bring on such short notice. It's not like we are in the age of gods and heroes when men were true warriors, the days where a mortal could fight on equal level with one of the divine. Finished War in a reminiscent tone with sadness mixed in as he thought of that forgotten age of man. The warriors, both men and women, who lived during that age were truly worthy of the lives they were given. Mortals who strove for power and prestige in the name of pride and prosperity. The days when gods were proud to name humans the successors of the planet. The days when man was worthy of standing in front of deities as equals rather than on their knees like subservient dogs. War despised the mortals of this age. They were definitely destructive creatures with a lust for war and carnage. The idea and ingenuity the humans of this age implemented in their quest for eradicating one another always amazed and intrigued War to no end. The problem was that humans as individuals were too fragile now. They didn't produce great warriors that were as strong as full-fledged armies. They didn't give him the excitement that he craved, the excitement of combat between warriors that could shake the world. Do you remember those days, Death? The days when mortals were worth something and held great promise in them. The days when man was worthy of leading the world into a brighter future, the days where deities were proud to treat mortals as their equals. Humans nowadays, they are just walking husks so easily influenced by a few mere words, children that hold no mental fortitude. War shook his head in disgust at the thought of the mortals of this day and age. If there is one thing War respected above all else were those that have the will to stand against what they believe as wrong. Those that are easily manipulated did nothing but discuss War, as they are nothing more than disposable pieces. Death processed the words of War, and part of him agreed with the Red Commander's sentiments. Humans nowadays were quite annoying creatures. They were still as destructive as their predecessors, possibly even more so with the way modern humans are learning and inventing. But the humans of old were creations that were gifted the opportunity to walk the halls of gods and learn from divinity about what it means to hold power. Humans during the age of gods and heroes were creatures that embodied the phrase "the sky is the limit," and they understood where they were in the food chain. You speak of yourself as one who was in the realm of divinity and power during the age of gods and heroes. During the golden age you were the same as the humans you speak so ill of now. War tensed upon hearing the words of Death. To be reminded of his past always brought the same thunderous emotions out of War. Either Death didn't notice or didn't care was up to anyone's interpretation, but the pale rider continued his moment of voluntary education. Do you believe that simply because you have gained the title of War that everything you once were and everything that has happened to you is completely washed from your existence? Death paused a moment as his eyes gained a bit of a vermilion glow. The Red One could feel it. The rare moments where he and Death speak with one another, there is always a moment in the conversation where Death illuminates the gap that exists between the two riders. War is the concept of annihilating one's enemy in the name of prosperity, pride and progression of a people. To the victor goes the spoils. When a war is finished, the victors wash away all remnants of the fallen that is not beneficial or ingenious in the eyes of the victor. You have washed away all traces of your previous self because you have won against War. Death paused for a moment. But you can wash nothing away from the eyes of Death. I see all of it from the beginning to the end. War, you know that your intentions are not hidden from my eyes. Finished Death in a cold tone while looking at the child that stood before him. None could hide anything from Death. He was the constant that all met in the end. It is arrogant to believe that you could hide something from Death. War heard the words that Death spoke, but he also heard the underlying message, and that was the more important thing to understand. That boy is interesting, Death. Spoke War with a calm, knowing smile on his face. Death said nothing in response, but his eyes slowly dimmed in their eerie glow. The area returned to its darker aura. War took that as a sign that he was allowed to continue with his thoughts, but he would have to become much more careful. Death wasn't a being that anyone should ever drop their guard around. Only a fool drops their guard when they are in the den of a sleeping dragon. War continued, There are actually a few beings in this world that interest myself and the other two riders' death. I've spoken with them. We have kept a good eye on a few of these mortals, but none more so than the one that you have taken under your darkened wings. You as well as I know that no matter who you are, someone is always watching. Finished War with a calm smile as he looked to Death, waiting to hear his response. Hearing the words didn't surprise Death at all. He has been on this planet long enough to know such a rule, but it was yet a rule that he hasn't taught to his pupil. Then again, some things one must learn for themselves and understand the implications of those lessons. Death said nothing for a second. In due time that boy will begin his hunt. War smiled at the words. Are you preparing him for his conquest, Death? Death began to walk towards War. The Red Rider felt his instincts screaming at him to raise his blade and strike. But logic stopped him, and he knew the message being displayed by Death's movement. Within a few strides, Death stood shoulder to shoulder with the Red Rider. From War's own peripheral vision, he could see the eerie red glow of Death once more, but this time it looked to encompass everything with so much intensity. That boy will come for all of us in his conquest. You and the other two riders will test him at specific points in the future. He wants to stand at the top of the world. I will illuminate the path for him, and show him what it means to stand above the world. Finished Death, as the shine of his eyes blazed for one final moment, and enwrapped the entire area in a blaze, and as soon as the light hit its apex it disappeared along with Death. Within the dark area all that was left was War with an eerie smile upon his face. I hope your pupil is promising, Death. It was with those final words that War walked to his beloved steed, sheathing his long sword and mounting said horse, and rode away, leaving behind the flames of war. It was carnage. The blood of both gods and men lay upon Gaia, and he didn't know what caused this massacre. The wind rushed across the field in a fury. The sky was covered from one horizon to the other in gray clouds. Rain fell from the heavens trying to cleanse its beloved earth. Lightning struck with speed and precision. Thunder followed with its angered howl. He knew something was wrong. He could feel it. Turning around, he saw two gigantic beasts that loomed over the field, staring across one another in a showdown that looked to erase everything. The first of the two looked to be a strange amalgamation of creatures found all across the natural and supernatural realms. The body of the beast was that of a gorilla with two sets of thick arms that looked to be able to snap a dragon in half. The backside of the beast had an array of tails from all types of creatures, and the same for the wings that flared upon the back of the monstrosity. The fur of the beast was pitch black in color, and upon looking more intently he could see scales underneath the fur. What was strange was that the heads of the beast were blocked from his vision. All he saw were blurs of an outline that can be prescribed to the creatures' faces. The aura that rolled from the monster was blank, no emotion nor a myriad of thoughts. The beast's only palatable desire was to bring about the end. It was pure in a sense. The beast was pure in his desires, beliefs, ideals, and rational. No matter what stood before it, he would be the end of all things. His field of vision shifted to the other beast, and once he looked he saw the eyes of a dragon staring back into his very own. Nothing else of the beast could be seen, only its eyes called for his full attention, and his attention the legend was given. From the eyes of the beast he could see unbridled rage and hatred, but also burrowed underneath was sadness in the eyes of the dragon. The sadness in the eyes of that dragon made him feel so broken and in pain. He didn't understand why he felt so drawn and connected from looking into the eyes of this great creature. It didn't make any sense to him. He felt so protected in the great creature's presence, such familiarity with this unknown entity. Just as he was about to call out, the dragon turned its captivating eyes away and roared. It was a roar that could send 100 dragons fleeing in terror. Such dominance, such power, it felt as if the world was shaking. After another moment the beasts clashed. With a rush Naruto sat up and placed his hands on his head, and he could feel the sweat permeate from his body in response to the images he saw. Was that a dream? Oh, you're awake! Excellent, Lord Surzex will be happy to hear the news. Confused by the newest voice, Naruto looked to the door and gazed upon a young woman that looked to be the same age as himself. Her hair was black in color and was pulled into a low ponytail that was currently hanging over her right shoulder. The young woman had a cute smile upon her face, and her green eyes shined with excitement, apparently at the sight of him being awake. The woman wore clothing befitting a maid or housekeeper. Give me a moment, I'll go get him for you. With a confused nod, Naruto watched the young maid leave the room to go and report the news of his awakening. Naruto finally began to take notice of the room and his apparent temporary living arrangements for the moment. The room was spacious in size, and the walls were colored a deep red that matched the carpet upon the floor. The walls were decorated with paintings and pictures that looked to be made by some of the greatest artists the world has seen. As he continued to look around, he finally noticed the bed that he was sleeping on. This is easily the comfiest bed I have ever slept on, Naruto thought with amazement and confusion. Just as the thought exited his mind, Naruto heard the door to the room open up and saw two individuals walk in. One was Surzex, which he was already familiar with, but the other looked to be a carbon copy of Surzex, but with a more mature disposition and air surrounding him. With a smile on his face, Surzex spoke, "Hello Naruto, how are you feel?" Taking a second, the hybrid spoke, confused but rested. "Thanks for asking." Confusion? Well, let's work on alleviating that. But first allow me to introduce my father, and lord of this manor, Zeoticus Gremory. Finished Surzex while looking to his father. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto," spoke Zeoticus with a deep voice that epitomized charisma and charm. The man had an easygoing smile on his face. The smile even made the man look a bit goofy in the eyes of Naruto. But hiding underneath that goofy smile, Naruto felt the power that laid under the physical form of this lord. The man didn't bear power that rivaled the potency of his son and heir, but the reservoir that Naruto could sense was something that couldn't be ignored. "The pleasure is all mine, Lord Gremory," spoke Naruto with respect in his tone. Zeoticus' smile widened slightly upon hearing the respect. A respectful young man, that's good, you don't meet very many of them nowadays. Zeoticus paused for a moment, and playful glared at his son, receiving and small smile. "Please, father, don't try to paint me in a negative light in front of our guest," playfully uttered Surzex, gaining a chuckle of amusement from his father. Naruto looked between the two and noticed the closeness and love they shared for one another. It was nice to see a father and son with a strong bond. "Now, Naruto, you said you were confused?" Broken from his aimless thoughts, Naruto looked to Zeoticus and registered the question presented to him by the Lord. I would like to know what it is that happened after my battle with Surzex. All I remember is us clashing one final time and being enwrapped in a bright light and nothing else," finished Naruto as he looked to the heir to the house of Gremory. Surzex smiled upon hearing the question and sat up a little bit upon hearing the question, which didn't go unnoticed by Naruto. "Well then, allow me to paint the picture of the final moments.